Good evening. This is the August 27, 2024 regular meeting of the Compliance and Amendments Committee of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force of the City and County of San Francisco. The time is 4:56 p.m. The Sunshine Ordinance Task Force and its committees convene in hybrid meetings that allow for either in-person attendance or remote participation. Public comment will be taken on each item of the agenda. Meeting decorum. Any member of the Compliance and Amendments Committee may call for decorum due to the disorderly conduct of meeting participants. Persons who engage in threatening and/or menacing behavior may be asked to leave. Chair LaHood, that completes my announcements.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear did you read meeting decorum or should I read meeting decorum? Again, thank you. Yes, please call the meeting to order.
Item 1, call to order, roll call, and agenda changes. Roll call. Chair LaHood.
Present.
Chair LaHood, present. Member Pilpel.
Present.
Member Pilpel, present. Member Anderson.
Present.
Member Anderson, president. Member Wolf, absent. We have a quorum.
Great. And agenda changes. You said that we do know about one agenda change. Is that correct?
We do. Rosa L. has submitted a request to withdraw their complaint. That's item 4, file 24001, and that notification was received prior to the meeting.
Okay. I think so. That complaint has been called. They're pulling the complaint. Was the Department of Public Health notified that they did not need to appear then?
Yes, the Department of Public Health was notified.
Okay. Once we get there, I think we might have a few more things to say, but just if anyone, or I guess it was pulled. Do we need to say anything else, or it was pulled and the matter is closed?
When we get to the matter, we can say that the matter was withdrawn.
Okay, let's do that. Any other agenda changes that we know about?
Not that we know about.
Okay. I think I apologize for the late start, but I think this is going to be a relatively short meeting.
Okay. Is public comment needed?
I guess we could have, we can accept public comment if anyone would like to make public comment on the fact that item number 4, file number 24001 has been withdrawn by the complainant.
We have no one in the room. In the online community, we have a respondent in one of the matters. If they raise their hand, I will call on them. We have no public comment.
Okay, please call the next item.
Item number 2, approval of the June 25, 2024 Compliance and Amendments Committee meeting minutes.
Okay, do we have any comments on the minutes?
Member Anderson, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Member Pilpel.
I am only seeing them.
Okay,
now.
while you're looking, I will say one thing. And actually, I actually think that perhaps this is fine. I'm just noting on item number 7, which we actually discussed at length, but our discussion, I think, would be too voluminous to document. And I think the comments end up getting documented in the ongoing updated following agendas, although I did not have time to update things for this agenda, but I will for the next one. So I'm fine with the minutes. Member Pilpel, I don't know if I will also note that I do appreciate the timestamps on the various items, which I think will help people navigate the audio as needed.
As do I.
I have no strong feelings about the timestamps. I have not had a chance to use my comb to go through this. If it's urgent that we adopt them, then you might need to give me another moment to get with the program and suggest changes. If not, then I would request that we continue these so I have a little time. It doesn't look like there's much here, and I'm sure the actual actions are correct. There are a couple of things that
How about
came
this?
to
If we
mind.
give you 2 minutes to read it quickly, would that be enough?
Ooh, look at you.
Because I would rather
Yeah, I
dispense
get
with
that.
this.
Then let me just make a couple of suggestions in line here.
Okay.
And I've got,
You have the Bible.
yeah,
I have an electronic copy. One moment.
okay.
Okay.
If you want us to plow forward, we will
Mhm.
forward with the plowing.
One moment, please.
Actually, can I just mark this copy up? We can always print out another one of
Yes,
those.
and then read it into the
Yeah.
ordinance.
Does that work for you?
That works.
Will that
Thank you.
work for you?
Sure.
All right.
Are we still looking at 2 minutes?
We're getting there. While I'm working on this, on item 1, the action, it's usually either the call of the chair or to a date certain. Was the action call of the chair? I mean, that's fine, but it normally shouldn't read both. I'll let you think about that.
Ready to make changes?
Okay, I'll start at the top because Member Pilpel did point out one thing so in item number 1, where it says action moved by Chair Lohead, second by Member Wolf, that item number 6, file number 24001, be continued to the call of the chair until the next Compliance and Amendments Committee hearing on August 27th, 2024. Let's just strike to the call of the chair. It was my decision, but we decided at that moment that it would be at the next hearing, and it is on today's agenda. So if we just strike
The call of
the chair
until.
yes. So it will read to be continued to the next Compliance and Amendments Committee hearing. So just striking the call of the chair until.
Currently reads, action moved by Chair LaHood, seconded by Member Wolf, that item 6 file number 24001, be continued to the next Compliance and Amendments Committee hearing on August 27, 2024.
Correct.
Okay. I am ready.
Okay. Member Pilpel is ready to offer his comments on the minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay. Other than the periods and commas and non-substantive things, the committee discussed item 6 on the agenda rather than from the agenda.
Sure. Ms. Peterson, in item number 1, where it says the committee discussed item number 6, if you could change from to on.
And I'll be handing her this copy. Under item 4.
Just a moment, please. The committee discussed item 6 on the agenda.
Yeah.
Got it?
Under item 4, public comment. After that section, the committee recessed from 5 to 5:10 and then PM. I'm very fussy about AM and PM. All right.
It's only needed the second time.
Got it. Yes, correct. Yes. Under item 5.
Can I get clarification? Were you
You're
discussing?
going to get all
PM?
of this. You're going to get all of this.
Okay.
That's fine.
It's a typographical thing. I'm not gravely concerned.
Yes. It's not going to change the thing in the world.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just like on the action here, I was suggesting putting the file number in parens. Things like that. Okay. Under item 5, the first substantive graph, Sergey, is misspelled, Sergei. Third line under that.
Oh, thank you. I see that. The second mention of Mr. Zveranov's first name, his first name is misspelled. So in the second paragraph.
Third line, and the chief of police, striking the word chief in the second instance.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Sveranov stated, I would strike the word and, stated that the public records requested will prove that
Okay, before you keep going, so Ms. Peterson, in the second paragraph of item number 5, we're noting that in the third line of the second paragraph, it says chief of police chief, we're striking chief. And then it says Mr. Zveranov stated and that, let's strike and. Okay, go ahead, Member Pilpel.
It's not required, but at the end of that, those 4 lines, Mr. Sveranov requested computer-aided dispatch. I would probably put CAD in parens, but again,
No,
it's not required.
let's leave it.
That's fine. Okay. Top of the next line, top of the next page, sorry, Mr. Svernoff stated that no police reports, I would strike comma records. I think it just reads better to say Mr. Svernoff stated that no police reports or records of police units have been received. I didn't
Agreed.
understand the,
Ms. Peterson, at the top of the next page, on the second line, if you could strike after stated that no police reports, strike the comma and the records after the comma. So it should read stated that no police reports or records of police units have been received.
I'm not even sure what records of police units are, but I don't care right now.
Okay.
Okay. 3 lines down, Lieutenant Beauchamp, maybe this is true. I wasn't at the meeting. I didn't listen to the audio. Lieutenant Beauchamp stated that he could provide criminal records. Maybe that's he could not provide criminal records. I'm not, it doesn't, it seems odd. You were there.
Member Anderson, do you?
Exactly.
I don't remember exactly what he said.
If we have time to listen to it and find out, that would be great. If not, I don't care that much. It just reads a little odd. That's all. So maybe check tape.
Ms. Peterson, could you check the tape on that? Thank you.
And at the end of that graph, Lieutenant Beauchamp stated that I think the police department is better than his department. I would love it if it was his department. He ran the whole place, but
Okay. Sure. Lieutenant Beauchamp stated that the police department is still reviewing responses. Okay.
and then on the big action paragraph, can we read that carefully? Because I was having trouble with the English. Particularly at the end of line 4, if any item should be unredacted, maybe that's if any item should be redacted, provide the code explaining why. But
Okay, hold on.
the whole
So,
thing
okay.
seemed a little,
So I'm going to read this slowly.
yeah.
Moved by Chair LaHood, seconded by Member Wolf, requesting that in regard to request number 1, and this is referring to the petitioner's request. So, and I think that's okay, that in regard to request number 1, that Lieutenant Beauchamp, and I think we should say, okay, return to the next meeting and provide within 5 days the body worn camera file,
Or files, plural.
sure, files with redactions keyed or assigned with the code or the law that could verify that each of those redactions, okay, that could verify, strike that, verify each of those redactions, comma, and if any item should be unredacted, provide the code explaining why the matter was redacted. I think that would be fine. It's a bit wordy, but I think if we strike the
That's fine, but
it's logical.
right.
And I'm going to read the rest.
But hold on.
Okay.
Verify each of those redactions. Why not just end it right there? Why would we want explanation for why something should be unredacted in the code explaining why the,
You know what? It sort of doesn't matter because if this is what we said, then we should leave it as is.
okay.
Okay.
That seems like, all right.
It may be a convoluted description, but I don't want to get into
Okay.
undoing what was said.
That's fine.
In addition, the committee requests that Lieutenant Beauchamp work with the police department's IT department to retrieve the requested information and send it to Mr. Zvernoff. I think that's okay. In regard to request number 2, referring to the petitioner's complaint, the committee requests that Lieutenant Beauchamp supply the records of the phone calls managed by the parties in items number 22 and 23.
Want number added?
Sure. Beauchamp supply the records of the phone calls managed by the parties in items number 22 and 23 for the dates and times requested. Confirm when the request has been sent to the city IT department and a response has been received. I think perhaps we could add and also confirm.
Or maybe add a comma after IT department on the last line and drop the word city because the request was for it to go to the police department's IT group.
Okay.
And not,
So in the last clause, let's say And also, so we're adding those words in front of confirm, and also confirm when the request has been sent to the Strike City IT department and a response has been received. Is that sufficient?
It's better.
I think it's a little better. And I agree with making things a little better. I don't want to rewrite what was said because that would take a lot of work to go back and do that. But I'm okay with cleaning up. Ms. Peterson, is that clear enough?
Repeating in regard to request number 2. In regard to request number 2, the committee requests that Lieutenant Beauchamp supply the records of the phone calls managed by the parties in items number 22 and 23 for the dates and times requested, and also confirm that the request has been sent to the IT department and responses have been received.
Sure. Great.
That was it. Okay.
Member Pilpel, anything else before we?
That's also perhaps a caution against long motions.
I hear what you're saying.
Okay. Item 6, and I think this carries over to today's agenda, complaint filed by Rosa L. against the Department of Public Health.
That's a good catch. Ms. Peterson, do you see where that is, where it says for item number 6, complaint filed by Rosa L. We need against the Department of Public Health.
Added against.
Thank you.
And then at the bottom of that page, the committee recessed from 7:30 to 7:45 p.m. with the p.m. And then on the next page, on item 7, I agree with what.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes. Mhm.
I agree with what you've said about the discussion on item 7. I might substitute the word possible for the before edit, so it would read the committee continued there, or the discussion of possible edit to the Sunshine Ordinance.
I think that's a good idea. If we could add in item number 7 on the minutes, on the second paragraph, where it says the committee continued, it should be its discussion
That's fine.
of possible edits to the Sunshine Ordinance.
Removing the.
And then this is entirely up to the group, perhaps another sentence that says, maybe even in brackets or something, the audio of the meeting contains the full discussion. So it's not that we're.
I think we need to do
All right,
that.
fair enough.
But I might say for the minutes for this meeting and in the future, maybe if we could mention which sections we discussed.
That's fine. Which sections of the ordinance?
Yeah.
In today's minutes, when we get to item
Yeah.
6.
Yeah. So I don't want to go back and do that for this one, but maybe going forward, if we do that for the next one, that might be helpful. Anything else?
And no action taken, and the rest I think is fine. I will pass this in.
Great.
Thank you for taking those. With those, I'm happy to move
Okay.
approval of the minutes as amended and discussed.
Do we have a second?
You have a second.
Thank you. Ms. Peterson, do we have anyone wishing to comment on the edits made to the minutes?
We have only responded in the online community. We have no one in the room physically. One moment, please. We have no hands raised for public comment.
Please call the vote.
Chair LaHood.
Aye. Oh, I think Member Pilpel goes first. He made the motion.
Member Popel.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Chair LaHood.
Aye.
Chair LaHood, aye. Member Anderson, aye. Member Wolf, absent. 3 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. Please call the next item.
One moment, please. Item number 3, public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. We have no one in the room. And no hands raised in the online community.
Can we just ask one more time to make sure no one in the online community wants to make public comment?
Yes, we have only one caller
Okay,
and their hand is not raised.
okay, thank you. Please, that's the end of public comment. Please call the next item.
Item number 4, file number 24001, complaint filed by Rosa L. against the Department of Public Health for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.21 by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and/or complete manner. On June 25, 2024, the Compliance and Amendments Committee moved that file number 24001 be continued to the call of the chair until the next Compliance and Amendments Committee meeting on August 27, 2024. On this matter, we did receive notice from the complainant prior to the meeting of their intent to withdraw.
Okay, so they have withdrawn the item. We're just mentioning this here again in case there was anyone here who came to hear this item. We don't need to take any action at this point. The file is closed at the request of the petitioner. Please call the next item.
Sorry,
Oh.
you said earlier that DPH was notified.
Yes, and the Department of Public Health was notified by Ms. Peterson.
Victor, Natalie, whoever over there.
I'm sorry?
Victor Lim, Natalie Poshman, whoever over there. The department was notified.
Victor Lim, Sunshine DPH, and Natalie
Great.
P.
Excellent.
We're
Okay.
notified.
Great. Please call the next item.
Item number 5, file number 23053. Complaint filed by Sergei Severinov against the Police Department for allegedly violating the Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.21, sub B as in boy, by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and/or complete manner. On June 25, 2024, the Compliance Amendments Committee moved to request that in regard to request number 1, that Lieutenant Beauchamp return to the next meeting and provide within 5 days the body-worn camera file with redactions keyed or assigned with the code or the law that could verify each of those redactions, and if any item should be unredacted, provide the code explaining why the matter was redacted. In addition, the committee requested that Lieutenant Beauchamp work with the police department's IT department to retrieve the requested information and send it to Mr. Severinov. In regard to request number 2, the committee requests that Lieutenant Beauchamp supply the records of the phone calls managed by the parties in items 22 and 23 for the dates and times requested, confirm when the request has been sent to the city IT department, and a response has been received. We do have Lieutenant Beauchamp in the room. One moment, transferring him to panelist.
Okay, and is Mr. Severinov did not need to be here? Did he say anything to you about his attendance or?
Mr. Severinov was notified. We didn't receive word from him about attending or not attending.
Okay. Regardless, once we've got Lieutenant Beauchamp on, this will be a good opportunity to get an update from him on what has been provided.
One other introductory thing. In the future on these italicized parentheticals, I think it would read better if we said on next date, the committee requested. So it's not just that there was a motion to request, it's that we took an action and requested.
I'm hearing what you're saying. Thank
Okay.
you. We don't need to do anything about that right now.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Wasn't supposed to be a brain tease.
Okay. Lieutenant Beauchamp is available to speak.
Lieutenant Beauchamp, could you say something so we can make sure that we can hear you?
Good evening, task force members.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. What can you please give us an update without me reading again the long paragraph that we have in the agenda? What updates can you tell us about our requests to you?
By all means, I itemized them into 3 requests. The first portion was sending Mr. Svernoff the
Before you
itemized.
continue, hold on, forgive me. Is there a way to turn up our speakers so we can hear a little more?
Getting it here,
Just a
which
moment,
is
guys.
unusual.
I think, you know what, I think it's just where I'm sitting and because of the air conditioning. I will just listen carefully. Thank you.
I will try to speak up. In regards to item number 1, the itemized redaction list, I sent that information on June 25th to Mr. Svernoff, and I CC'd the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. In regards to item number 2, that same day, the 25th, I checked with our IT department regarding the individual officers' phone records. Our IT person was out until the beginning of July, but they responded back that that particular officer had no phone calls, thus no responsive records could be provided. And then finally, in regards to Park Station's phone records, our IT department informed me that the phones for police stations are run by city IT. So they reached out to them. They found out that during the time I was making the request, the city had switched phone providers and would update me as soon as all the contracts were signed. I received notification on Monday from our IT department that city IT examined the records, but because of the switch in phone providers, they did not have the ability to go back to the date and time in question. So the police department has no responsive record for item number 3.
Okay.
Sorry, can I?
Go ahead. Member Pilpel has a question.
Okay, I see some of this in the file starting at page 126. I'm just trying to find, was there a letter or an email that you were reading from, Lieutenant, or were you just summarizing what's on page 126? I'm just trying to follow in the file.
Oh, I wasn't reading from the file. I was summarizing emails I had received from our city IT department. I can check the file and see if that matches what I sent the task force.
Okay, I mean, if you look at page 126, that seems like it tracks pretty closely to what you just related.
And actually, Member Pilpel, if you back up from there, you can see some of the exchange that tracks.
Correct.
Tracks those conversations and those communications from Lieutenant Beauchamp to others.
Yeah.
Yes, that is my email.
Okay. Bottom line is, unless we have further questions, it seems like the lieutenant followed up as the committee requested. Did we, I'm sorry, since I was not at the last meeting, did we request that this information be provided to Mr. Svernoff? And if not, should we, or?
I believe that it was. Lieutenant Beauchamp, can you confirm that the same information was provided to Mr. Svernoff?
I know I sent the first email regarding the redaction codes directly to Mr. Svernoff. I want to say in one of these communications that Mr. Svernoff was also included.
The July
page-
25th one, it looks like he was, page 122.
Yes.
You're saying page 122. I'm actually not seeing him on those emails, but
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. He's the subject, he's not
right.
who or the CC. You're right.
Let me see here one moment, please.
The June 25th on page 106,
Mm-hmm.
he was.
I see that he was CC'd on my communication back from the task force on Monday at 14:37 hours, which included my response.
Okay.
Monday yesterday,
Monday yesterday.
which we don't have in the packet.
Okay. But in other words, he has been made aware of all of these searches that you have conducted, and either you provided him with what we requested in item number 1, or you explained what was that there were not responsive records in the one case, and in the other case that they were not available because of the changing of phone systems.
Yes.
Okay. Members, do we have any other questions, and do we feel that this response was that this was a sufficient response to our request?
I don't think I have anything new. I think, again, the caution for us is in the future when we're asking departments to do specific follow-up after the follow-up to the follow-up, that we should be as clear as possible, whether it's at this length, more or less length, about what we're asking them to do. And that
I think we were very specific about what we were asking Lieutenant Beauchamp to do, and he did it. I think to our specifications. I see what you're saying, that to make sure it was also sent to the petitioner.
Right. And what underlying records we want to go to the petitioner, as opposed to what the task force or the committee needs to be satisfied that something's done. Because sometimes,
I mean, at the end of the
communication,
right,
but not the end
no.
records.
At the end of the day, I think it probably. I think. And Lieutenant Beauchamp, thank you. I think you did exactly what we requested. At the end of the day, I think we are always asking, when we're asking any city department to do an extra search, we are always asking them to send it to the petitioner, and also sending it to us, not because we need to pour over it, but we need to make sure that it was received by the petitioner.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we're
saying the same thing.
I think we're saying the same thing. What I'm trying to say is I am usually more interested in the back and forth between the petitioner and the respondent, or the respondent and the task force, all of that. I'm less interested in the underlying records. If the petitioner is satisfied that they got the underlying records, or the department says we sent 300 pages, I don't feel the need to read the 300 pages. I just want to see on what date they sent the 300 pages.
Right. Members, at this point, are we satisfied with the police department and Lieutenant Beauchamp's response to our request?
I'm satisfied based on what we requested, that he secured the records he could and notified the complainant.
Yeah. Lieutenant Beauchamp and Ms. Peterson, have you either of you received any other response from the petitioner that would indicate that anything else, that he is expecting anything else that has not been delivered or provided by us at this point, based on our request at the last hearing?
On this
particular item, I know he may have other open complaints.
I'm unaware of any follow-up on this item.
Okay.
And I've had no further communications.
Okay. At this point, and I feel like I often lean on Mr. Young for this. At this point, do we close the file, or do we, and then if the petitioner has any, oh, wait, we have a flow chart for what we're supposed to do.
Page 4.
Page 4, hang on. For those who are following along at home, we have a procedural process cheat sheet that we're looking at to make sure that we're consistent with our processes.
I think the appropriate motion.
Ms. Peterson wanted to say something. Please go ahead.
Option 1 looks appropriate.
Yes, I was going to say, regardless of who moves and seconds, that the motion would be to find that the police department complied with the order of determination and close the matter.
Okay, is that your motion?
It can be.
Okay, please make the motion.
It's done.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Member Pilpel, seconded by Member Anderson, to find that the police department complied with the order of determination and closed the matter.
Let's take public comment on that motion.
We have no one in the room. We have no online callers.
Okay, please call the vote.
Member Pilpel.
With thanks to Lieutenant Beauchamp, aye.
Member Pilpel, aye. Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Anderson, aye. Chair LaHood.
Aye.
Chair LaHood, aye. 3 ayes, the motion passes.
Lieutenant Beauchamp, thank you for appearing again. We appreciate your help, and we'll talk to you next time.
Lieutenant?
I'm not hearing Lieutenant Beauchamp.
Lieutenant, you are unmuted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just transferring rooms.
We just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for following up with us. We appreciate you being here again, and we'll see you next time on a different matter.
That you will. Thank you, Chair Litt.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Please call the next item.
Item number 6, hearing, review of the Administrative Code, Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67, and possible amendments to recommend to the full task force.
Okay, so members, according to what I have, I think we are ready to start in on Article number 3, which is public information and public records. How do you feel about, and I apologize, I did not have time to complete the notes from our last session, which was when we got through 6717. But since we still have more of the ordinance to go through, can we proceed with that, since that will be, that we'll make some headway through new sections before we go back and review what we've done before? Hearing no complaints?
No, complaints go to a different.
Right, complaints go to a different department.
I had a couple of introductory thoughts.
On what we've done already? Or just on Article 3? Or
Maybe Life, the Universe, and the amendments.
I'll take it.
Okay. Including handouts. So I have been promising for some time, and I'm now providing handouts. One of them is incomplete, and one of them is nearly 20 years old.
So
that
here's my request.
Yes.
Since your handouts were not included in the packet.
I'll just tell you what they are. If
Okay.
not, it may or may not be what you think it is.
Okay.
Okay. So the first is the incomplete chart that I've been yakking about for some months now. That's the analysis and comparison of the Brown Act, the old CPRA, the new CPRA, and the Sunshine Ordinance. I haven't figured out how to.
So this is actually not. This is not about reviewing the.
It
this
isn't.
is-
It is and it isn't.
Right,
Let me
right.
just hand it out.
Okay.
Okay.
So here's what I'm going to say. You're handing this out,
Yes,
but what I'm going to request is that, have you given a copy to Ms. Peterson?
I'm about to.
What I'd like to do is, and I hope this doesn't break your heart, but since this wasn't in the packet, I don't want us to necessarily refer to this
No,
for this
it's
time.
fine.
But Ms. Peterson, if you could make sure to scan this and include this in the attachments for this item at our next meeting, because I want to make sure that members of the public can see the same thing that we're seeing, even though I know we have no company today, but I want to follow the rules. So if we could make sure that that is scanned, and actually, Member Pilpel, if you...
I just wanted to explain.
No. I appreciate this. And actually, thank you for doing this. And maybe if you could give it a title, or tell, actually, you kind of have a title here. So Ms. Peterson, if you could use the description at the top of it and add it to our index so that people know what it is when they're going to this section.
Okay.
Awesome.
So just to finish on that point.
Yes.
It is a draft. You will find that there are boxes like on page 7 that are blank because I didn't get to all of those sections. I was trying to follow in a chart
Mm-hmm.
the sections in the Brown Act in public
You put
records.
a lot of work into this.
Yes, yes. I
Okay.
spent 5 minutes or so on the Brown Act, the old CPRA, the new CPRA sections, using that table that somebody created a while back with the changed sections. But I also pulled in the topic and then some notes about the section, because it's not just records definition, but which terms were defined and whatnot. And I tried to put it in a logical order, because as the Sunshine Ordinance was developed 30 plus years ago, it was blended from bits and pieces in the Brown Act primarily for Section 2,
Right.
or Article 2, bits and pieces from CPRA for Article 3, and then introductory stuff in Article 1 and general stuff for Article 4. So I tried to follow that same scheme, and where there are things that are out of place or whatever, you may not, they're in here somewhere, but I tried to follow that same logical approach.
This is great.
Okay.
I have a
It's not
question.
perfect.
No,
It's
no,
not complete.
we're not expecting perfect. We're not expecting complete.
All right.
Here's a question, and this is not to create work for you, because this is a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
Is this something that you're updating on an ongoing basis?
I was intending to finish this project
Okay.
with, and there's a whole section. This goes through whatever it is, I-48 or something on page 10.
Mm-hmm.
So like half of it is pretty well done, and the other half is pretty well not done.
So here's what I would say.
So it's a work in progress.
Since you're doing this anyway,
Yeah.
when you get to a point where more of it has been updated, will you be sharing an updated version with us?
That's the intent.
Okay, great.
Yes.
But for now, it would be great to have this in our file of working records to refer to. And then whenever you're at a point when you think like, okay, I have a new version of it, we can replace what we have
That's fine.
in with the new one.
And the idea is
Fabulous.
that this would have a bearing on our work, but also on the work of the full task force. When someone says, oh, that's a 6255 issue. Well, you know what? We're not necessarily quoting the old sections. The new section is now 7920 point.
Right.
Here it is, right? Or if somebody wants to say it's now, but someone's, well, what was the old? Or we're referring to some provision in the Sunshine Ordinance that was intended to track to the closed session provisions in the Brown Act.
Right.
Okay, so that's 67.10B, but that's 54957.6, whatever, right? It was intended to be a handy little reference. Again,
Yes.
not perfect, but it's a thing.
So here's a question.
Yes.
Should we ask Ms. Peterson to also share this with Chair Yankee for the rest of
Sure.
the task force?
Understanding that it is still a work in progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says draft. I made reference to these 4 other sections, the 2 Constitution sections and some other Charter and Admin Code
Mhm.
sections. And I intentionally did not provide an electronic copy of it yet because it's not complete, and I haven't figured out how to redact the metadata, whatever. So
Right.
it's a work in progress. It's just supposed to be a helpful little holiday present.
Thank you. I think this is great. And I would say thank you for introducing it to us. We probably won't refer to it today because everyone else doesn't have it. I am glad to have it though. And
If you find it of value, then mission accomplished.
I think I will. And I think Chair Yankee will be happy to see this as well. So.
Okay. The other document, I'm not sure if I want to hand out because I'm not sure yet if I want it in the file. This was the 20-year-old marked revisions to the entire ordinance, totaling 45 pages with 237 footnotes explaining all of the line edits and puts and takes. I want to think about that during the meeting as to whether or not, I'd like for you to see it, for example, but I'm not sure if I want it in the public sphere yet. So I want to think about that.
Okay. Why don't you think about that?
Okay.
If you want us to discuss it as a committee, and if you want everyone to look at it,
Right.
then I think we do need to put it in the
Correct.
public file. But why don't you think about that as we go over some of the incremental sections?
That's
and
fine.
then at the end of the meeting, you can decide. And if you do want to add it to the file, then let's make sure that Ms. Peterson gets a copy so she can
Understood.
have time to upload.
And at least this chart, if we can see that that gets to Member Wolf, that would be great. The other thing I was going to say is I think we have been, and correct me if I'm wrong, I like your summaries and edits and documents taking in, what do you call it?
Everybody's commentary.
Everybody's
Yeah.
comments, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at former chair, and I'm blanking, Allison,
Allison,
former
yes.
Chair Washburn.
Yes.
Right. I think what we have been doing, again, tell me if I'm getting this wrong, is going through section by section and doing sort of line edits and
Yep.
kind of small things. Some of which are bigger, but in general, small-ish things.
Yes.
I'm not sure if tonight's the night. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. At some point, I think we need to, one for you, one for Bruce. At some point, I think we should talk about the small things as we have, but also talk about like the bigger pieces that are not well resolved and are, frankly, I think harder than do you move this, word around here, right? The fundamental composition of the task force, the powers of the task force, how the complaint process should work, what should the city attorney do in the context of supervisor of records, right? Whether they like what they're doing or not, whatever, right? The whole section about court and remedies, right? How much of this, to some extent, I think we've hit on the how much burden to put on the departments. You shall by X date this thing, right? And you can argue about which things are better or worse and the cost and benefit of the various burdens. But some other things like an immediate disclosure request. I think we're all still with the idea that there should be an immediate disclosure request, but I'm not sure that we're all on the same page or that we've had the discussion about what should be in scope for what is an IDR and what is the appropriate timeline and all of that. And maybe it's anyone can ask for anything and that makes it an IDR and we're good to go. Or maybe that's not reasonable. And in order to make that work, maybe we say it's a smaller universe of thing and they need to get on it immediately, et cetera. And that there's a trade there somehow. I'm just saying that some of the concepts that are more unique to San Francisco and are not just our expression of Brown Act or CPRA, we've got a fairly wide latitude as to how to write it. Others may or may not like how that works, and we'll hear from them. But I think we should have that discussion of where we think the burdens make sense, and some balancing of that. Not a 62-55 balancing, but if we're going to put in X million dollars of the city budget to run this system, what is the most important thing out of that? Is it police department records? Is it, health department patient thing? Where's the priority here? And I'm not sure that we need to be specific to departments, but I think we should be cognizant of how departments have tended to implement it and where the language and where those burdens end up. I'm not saying that I have the answers. I just think that's a good discussion to have on, a couple other examples on department contacts. I think the way it reads now, you can literally, hand a note to a bus driver or anybody that you run into at City Hall and say, this is an immediate disclosure request. I want your department org chart. And arguably, they should get it to you within a day because somebody works for the city. They may be a holder of the record. You don't know, right? Does that make sense? et cetera. Anyway,
Here's my thought, and actually, I'd like to hear what Member Anderson thinks as well, because I agree we need to do both things. We need to think high level, but we're also going to have to go line by line.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's actually helpful to do the line by line part first, even if we might end up overriding some of the work we do because we decide that a particular section doesn't make sense, or we want to suggest that it gets totally rewritten. I think it's helpful to go through the whole thing and then think high level. But Member Anderson, do you have a preference?
Yes, I would agree with you on that. And I do believe that when we first started working on the ordinance again, that one of the things we were saying is that we wanted to go through it. And for those things that we could possibly ourselves make changes on or make suggestions that things be changed, that we go with those items. But that there were other things that needed to be addressed, the IDRs being one of them. So I would say we keep the bigger things we may want to do in mind. But for right now, going through the ordinance itself and cleaning up what we can clean up makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. And what if we, Member Pilpel, what if we think of it this way? We still need to get through Article 3 and Article 4. Mm-hmm. What if we were, I
know what you're thinking.
Well, what I'm thinking is I don't know if you know what I'm thinking, but I think it's going to take us at least 2 more meetings to get through everything, possibly 3. But perhaps we could pick a future meeting where we expressly say, maybe we even say, okay, we're in August, let's see, September, October, we could either do the October meeting. Actually, it probably should be the October meeting because I think we're not going to have a December meeting. Maybe at the October meeting, we give ourselves and everyone and Member Wolf a heads up that is the meeting where we're going to talk about the high level, if we want to, if we really want to move around pieces of furniture, that's where we talk about those. Would that be acceptable? Where we give everyone heads up?
Furniture is a sore point with me right now.
Okay,
but
sorry.
Yes, no,
okay.
Not. Yeah, perhaps as we're going along tonight, and maybe between
we're going to redirect traffic. We're going to turn 2-way streets into 1-way streets and adding bike lanes. It's a big conversation.
We're taking over the MTA. In any event, maybe as we go through tonight, if we identify big things, and perhaps between
we can flag things,
that's
absolutely.
Fine. And I was going to say, between now and the next meeting, if you could go back over your notes and even the things that we've agreed on text-wise, if there's a thing that you think is a big concept that you want to reopen for discussion, that's fine. And we may go over those and say, you know what, those 2, I think we're good with those. But these 3, you're absolutely right. We need to have a bigger, broader discussion about it.
And it sounds like maybe it would be, you're right, if it would be perhaps helpful as I go over what we've done before, and that we all go over what we've done before, maybe in the agenda, if I could sort of flag explicit things so that you all have a heads up and members of the public have a heads up that these are things we're going to be paying extra attention to because of the discussion that came up along the way.
Right. For example, I think 2 meetings ago, we spent the entire time talking about closed sessions. There may be some other things that we can talk about around the edges, but I think we basically got through a lot of the big and small concepts about closed sessions. I'm not aware of anybody saying out there that there's something horribly wrong about how the city does closed sessions. I think there's certainly things that we could tighten up and futz with, but in any event, I don't see that as a huge discussion topic like IDRs. I think IDRs kind of, and people can come at RDRs from different places. That's fine.
Well, and I think we need to keep in mind too that we are doing this work, and then we're going to make some proposals to the whole task force, and we're all going to have to get on the same page, because it's, even though we're doing a lot of the work, at the end of the day, the whole task force needs to say, yes, this is the direction we want to go.
Right. And none of this this hopefully will influence the state of the world, but it's not like this is the final say on anything.
Right.
There are lots of other eyes are going to have to get at this, et cetera.
Just wait till the attorneys show up.
Well, and that's why I was trying to be very careful about language, because I think let me just talk about that for a moment, if I may. I think it is useful to have some of it be open to some amount of interpretation, whether it's our interpretation, departments, attorneys, whatnot. I think that's fine. But I think there are other things where more clarity and less interpretation is warranted. And so having more consistent language, right, that if we want a particular actor to do a particular thing in a certain way by a certain time, then we should say, each department shall, within 5 business days of receiving a request, respond to such request in the manner that the requester asked for, something like that. So it's who does it, when do they do it, what do they need to do? And if they say, well, we didn't know what no, the plain language there says you shall, blah, blah, blah. It's not, in a, what do you call it? In an ideal world, the city would love it if the cops wouldn't, whatever. Well, yeah, that's nice, but that doesn't.
I have to say, I think guidelines like this, I was listening to everything you were saying, and when you were saying, there's some things we might want to leave open to interpretation. I actually think the less we leave open to interpretation, the easier the ordinance will be for people. The easier it will be for people to use the ordinance and for departments to be responsive.
Agreed.
Because if we leave too much open to interpretation, then people don't actually know what they're being asked to do.
True.
Or what rights and responsibilities they have.
But there may be some things where we want to say, they shall take reasonable efforts or diligently pursue or da-da-da. Some of those words may be the kind of things that it's appropriate for us to interpret on a case-by-case basis. I want less of that as well, but there are some people in the past that wanted to beef up 67.1 and instead of, just a high-level policy statement, wanted to make that, the city shall, blah, 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 in 67.1. And I've pushed back against that and said, I think 67.1 should be, here's what we would like to see high level, but it contains no specifics. The specifics are in Articles 2 and 3. And then Article 4 is the implementation of 2 and 3. So I just offered that as sort of some structural comments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Shall we proceed?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Does that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're looking at Article 3. And let's start with 6720, which is definitions. Does everyone have the ordinance in front of them?
Yeah. Some version of it.
Or some version of it? Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So in definitions, we have a definition of department. We have a definition of public information, which is the content of public records. I will admit that this is, so there's a sentence here in section 6720B that says, public information shall not include computer software developed by the city and county of San Francisco as defined in the California Public Records Act. I feel like I don't have enough information here. Why does it specify computer software developed by the city and county of San Francisco versus specifically? Do you know?
Yeah.
Member Pilpel? Okay.
There's a reason for that. There was debate in the 1990s when the city, in some instances, was developing its own software in Fortran or COBOL, C, C++, whatever, at the time, that was essentially proprietary to the city and for which there was concern that other people or entities might treat that as public information and say, oh, you wrote a program to run the traffic signals in the city or run the water system or do blah, 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 blah. The city spent millions of dollars developing or customizing that. I want a copy because, I work for the city of Palo Alto and we don't want to have to buy our own copy.
Where the
et cetera.
city might want to license it to a different city.
Right.
Okay.
So,
okay.
and there are other sections of state law and local law that talk about computer software. And so there was this idea that just because it's data in electronic form, that a program is different from a file, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these video files that we're talking about, whether they're at the airport or PD or whatever, those are video files, like audio files, like, records and documents. But the software that runs it, whether the city owns it, license it, or whatnot, really shouldn't be treated as public information in the same way as, your building permit or your health department record.
Right. Understood. Do we, given what, that many years have passed since then, do we have any knowledge about the way things have changed that would inspire us to change this or augment it in any way? Or is this an area where we might not know enough to change things and perhaps we should leave it as it is?
At this point, I would think leave it roughly as it is. I had some slightly different parentheticals and whatnot, but the concept I think still makes sense. When we get this out to departments and others,
they may
the
have
thing that we would flag.
Right.
And so the city attorney, Department of Technology,
we would say,
city
is
IT
there anything
departments,
we
right.
need to embellish here?
And,
Okay.
and they may come back with 3 more lines of thing that we may or may not like, but that's their opportunity to say, yes, that makes sense now 25 years later, or it doesn't.
Member Anderson, any other thoughts?
I would agree. I would leave it in for now. Not having any idea of what's being developed as far as software in the city departments. So.
Okay. Member Pelpel, you said this is such a short section. What do you have to edit here?
I would move, I think it's somewhere, let me see here. I would propose to add the definition of city in here
Whoa, wait, why?
because there are several other references throughout the article that talk about the city and county of San Francisco. And I think if we say for purpose, as it says at the beginning, wherever in this article, the following words or phrases, they shall have the following meetings.
No. I'm going to push back on that.
Okay.
We do not need to, like, the city and county of San Francisco, I think I don't think we need to define city. I feel like that is excessive. How about this? If we get to a section where it is confusing, I will stand corrected and we will come back. But right now, I do not want to define city.
Okay. So for example, in 67.21-1B, it currently reads, it is the policy of the city and county of San Francisco.
I'm sorry, 6721-1.
Sub-
I don't see a -1. Oh, no, there is no -1.
There is.
Oh, hang on. Yep. Okay, got it.
Sub B. It is the policy.
Hold on. 6721-1
-1 B.
B. I see departments purchasing new computer systems. What do you
Right.
see?
Sub B.
That is sub B.
I'm sorry. Wait a second. Oh, I was adding sub B. Never mind. In A.
Okay.
Okay. It is the policy of the city and county of San Francisco to utilize computer technology to reduce da-da-da.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where, and there are other examples like that where I would write it as it shall be city policy to use computer technology, blah, blah, blah. So I'm trying to get rid of the language city and county of San Francisco and just define it once at the beginning. So wherever in that article referring to city or city policy, we just have to say city or city policy.
I'm going to say this. I don't want to do that right now because even though as an editor, I totally agree with you. I think we're not going to win that fight. And so I don't want to change that throughout because we're not going to win that fight. Let's not have it. Let's put our time and energy into, I think, areas where where our influence is perhaps more needed.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Similarly, or maybe not so similarly, elsewhere in the article in 67.21A, there's reference to custodian of a public record. And then there's a bunch of stuff that flows from that concept.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be worthwhile to define custodian of a public record in 67.20. What I was trying to do.
That I would accept more.
Oh, look at.
Okay. No. Member Anderson, what do you think?
That makes sense. We have the supervisor of records,
Yeah.
definition of who that is, but not definition of custodian of records.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's add, yeah. Okay. So if we were to add D, custodian of records.
I would put it in A and re-letter them so that they're still alphabetical. But anyway, whatever.
You would, they're alphabetical. Oh, are they alphabetical? Look at that. Okay. Yeah, we could do that. Okay.
Where are you going to put it?
So Member Pilpel is suggesting that we keep them alphabetical so that A would be custodian of records because it comes before department.
Gotcha.
Okay. Oops. Okay. Custodian of records.
Or actually custodian of a public record.
Okay. The only thing is supervisor of records is still going to be at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Could we put custodian of records as a subset of supervisor of records?
Well, it's different because the way it's defined in that other section is that a custodian of a public record shall mean a person having custody of any public record or public information. So department people have custodians.
Yes.
City attorney acts as the supervisor of records for their SOR function.
Okay.
That could change depending on what we do with the handling of the SOR function and whether we keep this concept of custodian. But as it is now, if we're just moving it around to make it read better.
Okay. So to be clear, without reading this, custodian of a public record shall mean any city employee or elected official. Yes?
No.
No?
Good.
Who possesses.
Well, okay. If we're not changing it, if we're just moving it, then if you go down to 67.21A,
Uh-huh.
every person having custody of any public record or public information as defined hereinafter referred to as a custodian of a public
Yeah,
record.
but let's
Right.
make it clear. If a member of the public happens to be sitting here,
Right.
nobody can make a public record request of the member of the public. I believe you have to be
Of the
an
member of the
employee.
public?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you're reading this here, it says every person having custody of any public record or public information.
Okay.
So unless we specify that it needs to be a city employee or public official,
Right.
this is actually inaccurate.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So
Right.
that's why I'm suggesting that we say custodian
Right.
of a public
It would
record
be
shall
better
mean
to say shall
any.
mean a city employee.
I said city employee or elected official.
Or officer.
What's the difference between
We are officers, but not employees.
yes, we
but
are city employees.
well, technically, no.
I think technically, yes.
We're in the employee system for purpose of benefits, but in terms of definition, we're not employees, we're officers of the city and county.
Okay.
Let DHR come back and futz with it.
Actually, let me ask, Ms. Peterson, would everyone who this applies to be a city employee, elected official, or a commissioner? Is there any other category?
I would like to check and get back to you on that.
Okay.
We need to think about contractors as relates to Form 700. things like that.
No, but contractors are not subject. I don't think. Hold on. Oh gosh.
It depends,
Oh, this gets so confusing. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If there's a contractor who's got a desk and is embedded at a city department, if they're acting
Right.
like a city employee,
Right.
see, this is why these definitions are pretty, yeah. The idea is that a custodian of public record is a city person having custody of any public record or public information. That's the concept. Whether that's exactly how we spell it out or not, I don't know. But that's the idea. You're right.
Is the question whether an officer is the equivalent of an employee?
I guess the question is, if we were to think of anyone who is subject to the Sunshine Ordinance, obviously city employees, elected officials, commissioners, and contractors functioning as city employees. Are we missing anybody? Are we missing any other categories?
Does the CPRA speak to this?
Oh, that's a good question.
Definitions?
Definitions?
Yeah. Well, I was going to get to that in a second. I think that the problem is that the CPRA takes a different approach, and its approach is that it's more of an all of government and then subbed out to the department level, that the agency or the department has the function, and not this everybody who's got a file cabinet, literal or electronic, is a custodian. It doesn't view the world in the same way. This was a more of a unique San Francisco bid, which is why it's difficult to reconcile those pieces sometimes.
But normally, don't departments designate their custodian of record?
Yes. But we are custodians. So we are custodians. So a custodian of a public record is anybody who is subject to the Sunshine Ordinance.
Right. And that's why I'm highlighting that there's this issue. I'm not saying we need to resolve it, but I'm saying that it is an issue. The way CPRA views the world is that you write a letter to the head of the agency. You want something from DMV, you send something to the director of DMV, and they've got to designate somebody and have a process and sub it out and da-da-da. It's, if you hand it to some employee at DMV, either they're going to say, I don't take it, or they're going to say, I have to pass this to my boss. This is just going to get lost in the shuffle. It's going to be a while till you get a response, right? So it's not on them to respond. It's to get it to their CPRA or FOIA person. San Francisco has this, you can literally hand it to the bus driver concept, which from my viewpoint doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, here's my recommendation, because I don't think we can answer this here.
Right.
What if I provisionally put custodian of a public record shall mean any city employee, contractor functioning as a city employee, commissioner or elected official who has custody of any public record or public information and is subject to the Sunshine Ordinance. And then I put comment, check with our DCAs. Are we missing anyone?
Yeah.
And can we move on?
And the only thing I would add, and you can put a footnote that I was adding this, is that when we were a small town, and I'm not saying that information shouldn't still be readily available, but it makes more sense to designate one person within a department to do it. Otherwise, if you've got a department with 500 people and anybody's handing them a note, something's going to fall through the cracks.
That's designed for failure.
Yeah, it's designed for failure and frustration, especially for the public. So if there's a designated person within each department who is the custodian of the record, and every request is funneled through that person, whoever it is, or two people, doesn't have to be one. It could be two or three, depending on the size of the department, but there should still be a designated custodian of record for the department. Otherwise, you get chaos and you get people who say, I asked everybody I saw on the street who looked like they were wearing the uniform of the department to please give me this record. And that's just not feasible.
I totally agree. I'm not sure if I spelled it out in my version 20 years ago, but I definitely had that concept in mind that and I could probably write this out pretty quickly if I had to, each department head shall designate a primary person to handle public records request and an alternate, and that person shall respond, et cetera, that essentially it's a safe harbor provision or something, that if a member of the public sends a request to a department head, to their immediate secretary or assistant, to the designated public records person, et cetera, that's considered in and received. They should check their messages and boxes, all that regularly. As opposed to you hand it to a bus driver. You hand it to a bus driver, maybe it'll get to somebody, maybe it won't, but the department shouldn't be on the hook for training all their bus drivers. They should definitely be on the hook for the department head, the secretary, the designated contact.
Okay, what you're both suggesting makes total logical sense, but it is contrary to my understanding of what the ordinance currently
Right.
requires. So is this one of those big idea changes you're talking
think
about?
it is.
Okay, member Pilpel. And actually, member Anderson, I wrote your note in here, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, this is adding this is a big idea change. Okay, we will come back to this. Okay.
It can be done either way. It's not that what we're doing now is wrong. It's just a different approach, and it produces what it produces.
Right. So I'm going to say this is one where we're going to have to get everyone on board. This is not a simple edit. Yeah. Okay.
But it is a logical evolution.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, others are going to say, no, I should be able to, make my request to anybody, anytime, right? That's different.
Yeah.
So essentially, we're saying, do we want to shift responsibility for responding to sunshine ordinance requests to a centralized authority within each department?
Yeah.
Okay.
And resource it and hold them accountable, right? I think it's easy. Let's say we've got 50 departments plus or minus, right? Let's say we have 3 or 4 main people at each department, right? I think it's easier to hold 150 to 200 people accountable for enforcing this
Than
important
thousands
thing
of
than
individuals.
thousands who are going to do a not that great job.
Okay, this is a good point. Okay. Any other descriptions or definitions that we think need to be added? Or should we?
I think the rest of it is okay-ish. I'm not sure that I would keep supervisor of records in the definition. I might just call it city attorney throughout, but it depends on what we end up doing with that function. We might keep that function. We might change that function. We could move it elsewhere. It depends on what that concept is.
Okay, I'm going to put a note here. This may change pending other discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, SOR is like a topic area. It's not as big as the other things, but it is a topic area.
Okay. Okay. 6721, process for gaining access to public records, administrative appeals.
Okay. So on this, if I may, just for a second.
Actually,
Yeah.
because I know you're super familiar with this, could you give us a minute maybe to read through, let's give everyone 3 minutes to read the section. I feel like we live in this section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so can I introduce a little bit? Or-
Sure. And then can we go one by one? Because at the end of the day, we're going to go one by one.
Yes,
Okay, go ahead.
the ants are marching.
Hmm.
I think all or most of this language is good, but I think there's too much of it in here. I think 21A has too much of everything thrown in. So I'm interested in cutting it up into pieces and moving it around. For example, I think 21K.
Hold on. Why are you jumping to 21K? Why don't we start from the top?
I'll tell you why. Because 21K says CPRA governs in general, except as we enhance the provisions herein. Okay, I would move that to a new section between 20 and 21 that I'm currently calling 20-1, because that parallels 67.5, which remarkably says something like meetings shall be open in public and governed by the Brown Act, except in particulars that are discussed here. So
I see what you're saying. That K
parallel.
is sort of buried when
Right.
it should be set up front.
Right. Because in fact, public records disclosure is governed by the CPRA, except where it's enhanced here. And yes, we're burying the lead.
Okay.
So that's an
So
example.
before I move this, Member Anderson, do you have strong feelings about copying the text of K from this section and essentially moving it up to its own section, which the numbering is weird because do we really make this, is it a part of definitions? We'll renumber things. But you're saying make it a new section ahead of between 6720 and 6721.
Yeah, place-wise.
Okay.
Plus, I think it also flows that the first thing you do in a section is do definitions, then you do what's the general application, then you do what's the base case, and then, it just sort of reads better.
Mm-hmm.
That seems reasonable to me.
Okay.
That makes sense. Instead of putting it as K, even if it had been A,
Yeah.
Right.
that would have been fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I just copied that whole text and moved it up there, I'm going to read what it currently says, which is release of documentary public information, whether for inspection of the original or by providing a copy, shall be governed by the California Public Records Act, Government Code Section 6250.
Or the new code
Well,
section. Yeah.
Right. In particulars not addressed by this ordinance. This is where, okay, shall be governed by the California Public Records Act, in particulars not addressed by this ordinance.
Or article. Whatever.
No, well, this ordinance, meaning the Sunshine Ordinance, and in accordance with the enhanced disclosure requirements provided in this ordinance.
Or,
So this is the thing, well, it's not,
Well,
it's an
because-
ordinance.
right, but this particular article speaks to public record.
No. This is talking about the whole thing. I think it's talking about the whole thing.
Okay, one
Yeah.
could futz with that later.
Okay.
But yes, that's the concept. That's
Okay.
absolutely correctly the concept.
Okay, so we've moved that up. Now can we go back to 6721A?
Sure.
So here's an interesting thing. Since we have now we've defined custodian of a public record. However, then we have our big idea change, which is, do we want there to be a centralized authority within each department? So I don't know, maybe which one should we edit this for? Should we edit this for, actually, I'm going to recommend that we edit it for custodian of a public record. And then at some later point, we're going to decide if that is going to become
Supersede.
a centralized authority rather than the individuals being responsible, yeah?
Yes. Either way, and whether it's in this section or in another section, we can say, and it's somewhere else buried here, that as part of their regular job duties, every person who receives a public records request, whether it's directly from the public or from someone else in their department, shall endeavor to find that public record and make it available. So it's not like even if you're not in the line of fire that you can avoid the responsibility. No, everybody that has access to a record, if someone says, I'd like to see that record, has to go find the record. Again, that may or may not be relevant to this particular section, but I don't want that concept to get lost. That somehow if we move to the department designated person, then somebody else who's out at a health clinic or out at some, rec center in the neighborhood doesn't have to go look through their records. Yeah, so if the department, if someone says you have a public record, I would like to see that or a copy of that, you need to get with the program.
Right. Okay. For
All
the
right.
purpose of simplifying things here,
Yeah.
since we have defined custodian of a public record above, can we simplify this and cut out the language before shall and just change it to a custodian of a public record shall?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else we would want to change about that section in terms of?
We're still at A.
Mhm.
At this point, no, but I would want to go back and really correlate this to what's in state law.
Mhm.
And, it may be that we just ended at reasonable copying charge and move the actual or 10 cents to 67.28 with the fees. So that
Mhm.
we're not having two different sections that talk about
Well,
fees.
here's a question too. I mean, there shouldn't be, if it's delivered electronically, there should be no charge. Do we need to specify that here, or does that go into the fee section?
That might, it could go here, it could go in the fee section, it could go into 67.21-1, which is all about electronic records. There are options. So maybe if you want to just make a note, no fee for electronic records, where to put it, question mark.
I think it would be less confusing if you got a fee section,
Mhm.
that everything that has to do with fees is there.
And electronic records being free, also being there.
Yeah, being there, because that way you don't have to look from one place to another place to another, figure out if, in fact, there is a fee.
Okay.
Yeah. I vote with the woman in purple on my left.
Here's a question. If we say, so, and shall furnish one copy thereof. See, here's the problem. It says upon payment of a reasonable copying charge. And
Okay, again, this could be written unless the record requested is in electronic form.
Or what if we said shall furnish one electronic copy or a hard copy thereof upon payment of a reasonable copying charge? No, don't do it there. Okay.
Put everything in fees.
Okay, but the problem is right now it says,
Copies free.
right, but the problem is right now it says shall furnish one copy thereof upon payment of a reasonable copying charge. So it assumes that there's going to be a payment.
Yeah. But if we put in fees that are electronic copies, no fee.
Mm-hmm.
And then any paper copies, fee. Then that pretty much takes care of that across the board,
Mm-hmm.
or so it seems to me.
But do you have any concern that by in this section saying upon payment and not specifying that there's a way to get a copy with no payment? that it implies
Well,
that a
personally,
payment is required.
I would take out anything that had to do with payment in this.
Yeah,
I would take out anything that had to do with payment and just say see fees.
Okay. So this again is why, in part, why I did the chart, so that you can go back to which provision is most on point or what do you have to correlate with in state law. So in the old CPRA, I think the most related section is 6253A. Public records are open to inspection at all times during the office hours of the state or local agency, and every person has a right to inspect any public record except as hereafter provided, period. So I was hoping that this 21A, the first substantive part of the law, right, after you say that CPRA governs except as provided, that the first thing that you see is what is the basic one sentence, highest level statement of the obligation. And it's that public records are available during regular business hours to any person except as otherwise provided, period. And if they say, well, how do you summarize this whole fakakta thing? That's the answer. Public records are public and they should be made available, period. So however we say it, right? And I agree, we can put the fees in fees and not get hung up on. Somehow this should be as clear and concise about what the obligation is as makes sense. That's my thinking. I don't hear you disagreeing. And there are a variety of ways to say it.
I guess we could leave it like this for now, and I'll make a note that says, find a consistent way to say this throughout and indicate that an electronic copy is free without rewrite. So you don't want to rewrite this here.
No,
Okay.
fees I think should be all in one spot.
Right. But the problem is because we mention a fee here and we don't say that there's a way to get a free copy, I feel like what we're going to run into is what happened at our last full task force hearing, where the medical examiner was charging people for copies and not giving them free electronic copies, which they should have been doing all along.
Then I don't think we need to answer this tonight, but I think we can think about whether it's just the big concept, records are available, or if it's all records are available for inspection at any time reasonably, blah, blah, blah. And if you want a copy, that there may be a fee if it's in paper, or there may be other fees if it's put on disk, or or there may be no fee if it's some other way. But the basic thing that records need to be made available, somehow that's got to be in here and not so obscure.
Exactly. And the thing is under fees, you could put electronic copies free as the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
So people know.
Yeah.
How much is it going to cost me to get this? Oh, it's free electronically?
Right. Or it's free if it can be delivered by email. If it needs to be put on a hard drive, you either have to pay for a hard drive or supply your own hard drive.
Right. And that could be the second thing.
Yeah.
And again, some of these things, when I talked about having some wiggle room and ability to interpret, disks were available 25 years ago. USB drives were not. SD cards were not. I assume that in the next 25 years that there will be new forms of media. And, you're currently on email and phones. You may be on, hovercrafts, and who the heck knows by then.
Or a chip in your head.
Yeah. I'm okay. You know what? I'm going to flag this. I hesitate to move away from this because I feel like it's really important. And
It is.
and it needs to be consistent everywhere. So, okay.
But I don't think that there's any disagreement among us about the concept. the how you express it and which things go in which place, yeah.
Right, but I don't think we can leave it this way. So shall furnish one copy thereof upon payment of a reasonable copying charge is not acceptable to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just flag it. I'm just going to say, you want to strike it?
Strike it.
I mean, even if we just cut it at the end of the line that said, to be inspected and examined by any person, period, and then had a second sentence, you know, a copy shall be made available upon payment of a copy charge if such charge applies.
Well, we don't even need to change it. So, and shall furnish one copy thereof upon payment of a reasonable copying charge.
If such a copy charge applies.
If such, how about fee applies?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we say C section.
Or just leave it at that.
Okay.
They'll find the fee section.
Okay.
We're not hiding our fee schedule.
Okay. Okay.
And we've talked in other venues, full task force and elsewhere, that if the charge for records is $1.57 and the cost to a department to process that fee revenue is $7.59, they should not be charging for it because it costs the city more to process the transaction. So at some point, whether you write it into the ordinance or you just say, don't be stupid, right?
Right. I guess,
Give
no,
the guy
here's
the
the thing.
thing and make them go away.
No, we need, right, but we need to be explicit. So I'm going to, and shall furnish one copy thereof upon payment of a reasonable copying charge if such a fee applies. And then I'm going to say C section, you know,
Okay.
TK, whatever it is when we get there. Okay. Should we go on to B?
Sure.
Okay.
Was that fun for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
This too relates to the custodian concept.
Mm-hmm.
I would reword the order of the things because I get obsessed with what do you call it? Alphabetizing and things. But I do think that even if you ended at email,
Mm-hmm.
track this. The next sentence, if the custodian believes, blah, blah, blah. I actually wanted to delete that because it.
Do you think it belongs somewhere else?
I do.
Where should
It
it
almost
go?
completely duplicates language that's in 67.27 that I would move somewhere else. I don't want to delete it from the ordinance period, but I just think that's not the place for it because that's talking about justification for withholding, an important concept. But I think, again, the main concept in B is the 10-day deadline and how do you get it in?
Member Anderson, what do you think?
I think it should be stated as often as possible that if the department doesn't feel that the record is a public record, that they should spell it out at the time the request is made.
So you think we should keep it here, even if it repeats something in another section? Yeah.
It is duplicative.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, Member Pilpel, think of it this way. If we want it to be clear, but we also want this to be useful for the people who need to comply. If somebody needs to understand,
It cuts both ways.
yeah.
Right? So I'm not saying we shouldn't have a section on withholding. I
Mhm.
think we should, whether it's 26 or 27, but I would put everything about withholding and exemptions and claims and there so that, because I don't want in the future for petitioners to say, well, that's a violation of both 27G and 21B, third sentence, because they didn't properly justify. And you say, well, I think it's only one and not the other. Well, if there's a provision, state it once, back it up. We're good with that, right? The point is, in order to understand all of the requirements of records disclosure, you really have to get through all of Article 3. You can't just say, I'm only going to read 21 and then I'm done. Yeah, 21 will tell you the basics, but you got to go to 27 on exemptions, 24 on this, 26 on, right? There's an entire statutory scheme here.
Okay, here's a question.
Yeah.
If this exists somewhere else, should we leave everything through email and say for exemptions, C, and then point to another section?
We could, but I think in the end, what we should do is take the new version of the ordinance, whenever that happens someday in the future, and boil that down and say, if you're making a request, here is an example of a properly formulated request. You should expect that the department will do
but hold.
and cite
Okay,
the sections.
okay, no, but that's different
Right.
than having an ordinance that people can read and understand. Like having a roadmap of how to file, how to file a complaint or to, comply with a records request is different than having an ordinance that someone can just read and understand.
I think shorter, clearer, only saying it once is better. And if it's logically organized, so we're not burying the important stuff, right? If the headers say records request, fees, general, exemptions, it shouldn't be that hard to find. Right now, it's hard to find stuff because it's buried in sort of versions of spaghetti. If we can clear that up and put it in the right place.
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. And I want to hear what Member Anderson has to think. What if I just highlight everything from if the custodian through provisions of this ordinance and say, Member Pilpel says we should cut this because it is repeated in, you said 6727?
Yeah, current.
But I'm not going to actually strike it yet because I think this might require other discussion. Member Anderson, do you have specific thoughts on the second sentence in B?
Second sentence in B.
The one that says, if the custodian believes the record or information requested is not a public record or is exempt.
I believe it should be left.
Okay.
It should be reiterated as often as possible
Mhm.
that they need to respond within a certain period of time to the request.
Okay.
As long as the dates match up everywhere.
Okay. So if you think if it's consistent, say it here, say it there, keep saying it again. Okay. What I'm going to do, because I'm actually not sure what I think. I'm going to leave both of your notes in here and indicate that we don't have consensus on this, but I think we can move on and perhaps as we get through the other sections, maybe we will come to an agreement.
And I don't know that there's a magic answer to this. There are plenty of ways to slice and dice.
Mhm.
That's fine.
I do have one concern. You notice in here, they talk about faxes and
Yeah.
got postal delivery, which is a little iffy
Yeah.
sometimes, or email.
Yeah. What do you think?
How can we write it so it says whatever delivery means are accessible or that are available?
Well, the problem is that if you're not specific about at least these things, right, then they're going to say, well,
I sent you an Instagram message.
right.
Mhm.
If a department wants to take it by Instagram message, fine. I don't read that there's currently a requirement to do so. And I don't want departments to say the only way that I'm willing to take it is by Instagram. And if you're not on Instagram, the heck with you, right?
Exactly.
So,
Or text.
Right. I don't think
Right.
we should get into text yet.
right. Well, and there are good reasons for that each of these things have some kind of either a trackable, traceable trail or are pretty obvious, right? If I run into you in the hallway and and you say, I just published this fantastic report on, children's health and the impact on smoking. You should really read it. And if the person says, I'd love to, can you have my email address? Can you email it to me when you get back to the office? They may not think of that as a public request, public records request, but guess what? It's actually a public records request. It was made orally. It was clear what they were asking for. The person has their email address. They have the record, bada boom, bada bang, right? And they shouldn't say, well, you didn't file a form or send it to the department head, and I had to do. You told me about the report. I was interested. You know how to get it to me, right? It's like, anyway, and so now there are departments who say, well, we check email, but we don't check everybody's email. Okay, well, you know what? You should have a dph.records that somebody checks several times a day. And I don't care who does it, but somebody should. And there should be a list, and it should be on their website, and that should be pretty obvious. If you call the main office and say, I want to submit a records request, what's your general email address? They should say, oh, it's dph.records@sfgov. And you say, thank you very much, right? That's not that hard. But now they're saying, oh, well, we can't find our fax machine or blah, blah, blah. You know what? I don't care where. If there are 50 departments, we can have 50 fax machines that either go to a fax machine or go to a computer or somewhere, right? Et cetera. And I don't care if that's technology from whatever. If you can't find anybody, and if you've got a fax machine, I don't have a problem with taking a request by fax, right? And it shouldn't have to be just Mr. Pasquarello who's worried about faxing in a request. Same thing with postal delivery. Here's a note. Have a nice day, right? Postal delivery. I mailed it. If you mail it to the wrong address, that's on you. But if you mail it to City Hall or 1 South Van Ness or 101 Grove, they should be able to figure it out. Public records request, Health Department, 101 Grove. That's pretty clear, right? Telephone, right? You called not some pinhead at the hospital, some person at the hospital, but the designated contact on a list, right? You called Victor Lim at the Health Department and said, I'd really, like to see the annual report for Laguna Honda from 2 years ago. Can you find it and send it to me? He should be able to.
Here's an interesting thing. And here's an interesting thing because it's saying, by the requester orally or in writing by fax, postal delivery, or email. Is next request actually email, or is that a different thing?
No, it's a portal.
It's a portal. So should we add fax, postal delivery, email, or electronic portal established by the department?
We can, but again, that's more like Instagram, that if a department chooses to, I don't want to write into the ordinance
how about
the
this?
department should force you to say that's the only way.
No, but I want to include ones that are acceptable. Because so writing by fax, postal delivery, email, or other
Acceptable electronic means.
or other, what if we say, or other portal set up by a department to receive such requests?
Other approved portals.
Yeah, just be careful that you don't force people into that.
No.
Because the department
the point is,
some departments will read that as that's the only way we're going to take it. So
such request may be delivered to the office of the custodian by the requester orally or in writing by fax, postal delivery, email, or a portal set up by the department to receive such requests, or other portal.
Mm-hmm. Approved. Department approved portal.
Set up by or approved by. Set up by or approved. What do you like better?
Designated.
Yeah. Okay. Designated by.
I would say maybe, and only because I want to either try to find now or in the future how CPRA defines.
Okay, what if we say, delivered to the office of the custodian by, how do we say it? So by any of the following, by the requester, by any of the following means. Would that, I mean, would that make you feel more comfortable where we're saying like,
Again, I would just try to be aware that if state law already requires it, then we can duplicate that
Mhm.
language. If we're providing something beyond what state law requires, then let's not make that limiting.
no, I'm actually trying not
I
to
know.
make it limiting. I'm trying to emphasize what you're saying, which is it's the requester's choice,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
So it's not that the department has to offer one of these options. They actually have to, the department has to offer. Oh, no. Oh, okay. Okay. Does the department have to offer? Hmm. Okay, here's the thought.
Mhm.
What if we leave what was there and say, in addition to, okay, so if we left it as may be delivered to the office of the custodian by the requester orally or in writing by fax, postal delivery, or email. In addition, a department may designate, in addition to these methods,
Mhm.
a department may designate other portals to receive such requests. How do we say, like, departments can offer more ways, but they can't offer fewer ways?
Fewer ways.
Why don't you
Okay.
just write that and we can edit that later? Departments may have other ways,
Mhm.
but cannot force people to use those. May offer other ways, but not require their use. Something like that. I mean, I think what we're finding right in this moment is the difficulty of taking a generally agreed upon concept and finding the right language that's not inconsistent with state law,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
that does what we want, does enough of what we want, doesn't do too much,
Mm-hmm.
Drafting is not as easy as it might appear.
Mm-hmm.
It's like writing and editing for an online news source. It's not as,
Okay.
you know about that.
Yeah. So such request may be delivered to the office of the custodian by the requester by any of the following means: orally or in writing, by fax, postal delivery, or email. Departments may offer other portals to receive such requests, but may not require, but must not require their use as a condition of receiving a request for a public record.
Yeah.
It might be a bit wordy, but sort of gets,
Something like
okay.
that. That's the
Okay.
concept.
Okay. And then I've noted that we have disagreement about whether the next sentence should stay or go. But
We have no disagreement that it should be in here somewhere.
right,
We just have different views about
where it should be.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. If we move on to C.
Yes.
This is an interesting one. I think especially the last sentence where it says a custodian of any public record, when not in possession of the record requested, shall assist a requester in directing a request to the proper office or staff person. I like this in spirit, but the way it's worded, any of us could be asked for records from, MTA and be obligated to tell someone where to find them. How do we maintain the spirit without overburdening people who really are nowhere near the records that are being sought?
second. And I think this is now at 7922.605. So maybe you want to put a little note on that.
I'm sorry. So we're
This is
looking
one-
at,
I know, but I was trying to cross-reference this to where it is in CPRA.
right, but that is not actually listed in here. So
I know.
yeah.
But I'm just saying, maybe you want to put a note and say, see this section, and that may be a thing that we can cross-reference. Not that we're going to necessarily have it in the ordinance.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What I'm saying is, I think the language in this code section is the one that talks about the duty to assist. That's
Okay.
a state law duty.
Well, why don't we look at the CPRA?
Right. We can.
Right. No. Okay. So do you have that at your fingertips? Not the number, but the actual language.
I don't have the new language because we only have in the book the old code sections.
Okay. Well, I can look this up.
Okay. So that's why I was giving you the
Tell me the number again.
7922.605. And if I may, while you're finding it, this section, the 21C section, this is what I call the EFNQ section. The existence, form, nature, and quantity. I mean, we didn't always call it that, but that's basically what it is. This is something that's different or enhanced beyond state law. That if someone says, I'm interested in the topic of fill in the blank, health outcomes in the Bayview, water quality violations on Ocean Beach, whatever, right?
Phone charger. I was tethered to my phone and I ran out of, it's an Apple.
Oh, no,
Or
but
Apple.
you've got your,
Yeah.
oh,
No, I
that one
can't.
doesn't?
No.
I didn't bring one
Well,
with.
I do not have the internet because
Okay.
I can't get onto the city. It's CCSF guest. Is that,
Yes, that is the city. You can't get on?
nope. Let me try again.
What's the code section again, please?
I'm sorry?
I was going to look up the code section. Is that where you're at?
Uh,
Sure. 79. One second. 7922.605.
I'm sorry, that's CPRA.
Yeah. Or California Government Code.
One more time, please. 69 point.
7922.605. In the process of discovery.
I am just trying to get on the internet.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, what I was saying about 21C, there's obviously a lot going on right now, is that if you have a topic that you're interested in, but you have no idea how a department has organized its records around that topic or question, then you can submit this 6721C request and say, I'm interested in that topic. Please provide me a statement within a week, 5 business days, 7 calendar days, of the existence, form, nature, and quantity of records that you have related to this topic, and the department shall provide it. Thank you. Which is more than what state law requires. State law maybe it's elsewhere. Sorry, it's actually 7922.600. When a member of the public requests to inspect a public record or obtain a copy of the public record, the public agency, in order to assist the member of the public make a focused and effective request that reasonably describes an identifiable record or record, shall do all of the following to the extent reasonable under the circumstances. 1, assist the member of the public to identify records and information that are responsive to the request or the purpose of the request if stated. 2, describe the information technology and physical location in which the records exist. 3, provide suggestions for overcoming any practical basis for denying access to the records or information sought.
So I don't have any grievance with those things. Those all make sense. What my concern is that the way it's written, it implies that any custodian of records would be required to respond to any request regarding records that to which they do not
Or may not.
are not even proximate to. Yeah.
Right. Which is again why I think this would be better written as a department or department head shall respond or shall arrange for a response to be made to such a request.
That's interesting. But we also don't want to, and so that person would be responsible then for pointing someone to a different department.
No, well, either to a different department or to somebody knowledgeable or to records that are within that department. Again, let's say that, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of health outcomes in the Bayview or water discharges at Ocean Beach, right? So you send an email to the department head at DPH or PUC on those things and say, I'm interested in blah. That department head or their person who checks their box responds and says, we got your request. We will respond by tomorrow or we will respond within a week. And then their public records person says, okay, there's an EFNQ request for this topic. Now I have to figure out who within the agency is the best person that can answer this. And we can come up with a statement that, yes, we've got documents for the last 10 years on this thing. We've got this number of reports, et cetera, right? That they have to figure out how to respond, but by getting it to the department head or their designated PIO, that's the person that is best to formulate the response, not some nurse at general or some water quality inspector at a treatment plant or whatever. It's somebody, at headquarters that has access to everybody and that is their responsibility. There aren't a whole lot of these requests, but that is I know that somebody at the health department has got to know about health outcomes in the Bayview. I don't know who, I don't care who. I just want to know something on this topic and they can get back to me within a week. That was where that whole concept came from, which all seems totally reasonable to me, but not reasonable if you just farm it out to some random person.
Somebody in animal control and tell me,
Right.
okay, you do records, so tell me what
Right.
goes on at Ocean Beach. That makes no sense.
Right. So if you send it to Grant Colfax or Victor Lim, they should figure out or have the staff to deal with it. Or say really the person you want to talk to is Dr. So-and-so because she's the expert, he's the expert on that topic out there. I'll give you the phone number. They'll tell you whatever you want to know on that. That's
Okay,
fine.
so to simplify this, we actually, if we got what we were asking for at the beginning of this whole discussion, which is a designated departmental custodian, a question directed to that person, this response would totally make sense. And then, the part that says a custodian of a public record when not in possession of the record requested shall assist the requester in directing a request to the proper office or staff person. So they could say, oh, you actually don't want, DPH, you actually need to talk to Public Works. And they would be responsible for redirecting.
It's like that last sentence is like when Lieutenant Beauchamp says, if you want police records, there's a department at police, there's a group at police that handles that. If you want CAD things from 911, then you
It's
actually have to go to
Department of Emergency.
DEM
Right,
because
right.
they hold those records, we don't.
Right.
And we're telling you, here's the person there, they do that all the time, blah, blah, blah. He's doing his job, that's fine, but that's why that's in there. That you can't just say it's somebody else over in another department. You have to,
tell them who and how, you have to help them. We don't want to be too specific about what that means because that'll depend on the context. But again, it's the requirement to assist.
Okay, here's a question. Why is it within 7 days? 7 days is a random thing when everywhere else it's 10 days.
I wrote this one. The reason,
This is your fault?
I think so,
Okay, why is it 7 days?
because 10 days was finding a record with a 14-day extension, right? So that's actually a record. 1 day was like an IDR for stuff that should be on their desk, right? This was, it's going to take us some time to figure out, but it shouldn't be forever. It's a statement. So it's, the thinking was within a week, literally 5 business days, 7 calendar days, however you characterize.
Well, then that's another thing.
Right.
You need to specify.
It says
It says within 7 days.
Right. Right. So it can either be 7 calendar days or 5 business days. But in any event, the concept was within a week, any department should be able to turn out a simple statement that says, we understand your topic, here's where you would find that stuff. And that then you can turn that around and turn that into a formal records request. Right. So if they say, we've got all of this stuff related to this topic, and then you say, okay, well, I don't really want this stuff from 20 years ago. I actually that's the report that I want. So I'm going to narrow it down to this one report that you're requesting. And that's why they're helping you narrow the search.
Okay, so if we look at this as a department custodian, not random person who works for the city, are we otherwise happy with the language? And would our note on this be, if we're thinking of it as that person who is in charge of records for a department, are we happy with the language otherwise?
Yeah, I've got some minor edits on it, but all of the language in here is good. The concept as we've been talking about it, sorry if this took a few minutes, but I think validating this as being an investment is worthwhile. So yes, I think that what's here is good.
Member Anderson, what do you think?
I agree.
Okay,
Member LaHood,
yeah.
what do you think?
I think if we're thinking of this as applying to a department level custodian, it works. Okay, Member Pilpel, I'm going to give you a chance to make tiny edits. No, just tell me what, yeah.
I'll just leave it as a custodian for the moment.
Right, and I'm making this note, because if we're going to make that high level change throughout,
Right.
let's not do that now.
Right.
Yeah.
And frankly, even if whether or not we do the high level change, this one I think lends itself more so to a department head or department contact rather than just any random person.
Correct.
Okay. A custodian shall assist a requester in identifying the existence. I would want to be consistent. So I would say the existence, form, nature, and quantity. Because
Okay.
later on it's got quantity, but we didn't write it correctly up here. Of any insert public records or public information.
I don't think you need to, I think public records are information. I think that
Right.
works.
Well, because again, public information is defined, right?
It's,
all right.
it adds words.
All right.
Yeah.
Maintained by, available to, or in the custody of the custodian. See, again, that's that craziness. Or custodian of a public record, more craziness. Whether or not the contents are exempt from disclosure and shall, when requested to do so, provide. I would strike in writing, because I get to that in a second. Provide within 5 business days.
Okay, so you do want to change that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 business days after receipt of a request. I never like following. Following's not. Anyway. Within 5 business days after receipt of a request, comma, a insert written. So that's where the in writing goes. A written statement. as to the existence, form, nature, and quantity
Mhm.
of records relating to a particular subject or insert set of questions
Mhm.
with enough specificity to enable a requester, here again, this, to enable a requester to identify public records or public information for a request.
No, in order to make a request.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Pursuant to subsection B.
Mhm.
A custodian of, I would say A rather than any,
Mhm.
when not in possession of the record requested, shall assist a requester in directing a request to the proper office or, I would say, employee.
Okay.
That's what I
Member Anderson, how do you feel about any strong feelings about those?
The edits.
Yeah.
No strong feeling one way or another.
Okay.
Sorry, this also with this particular subject or questions or set of questions, this also gets to the, we don't have to respond to an interrogatory. No, you don't have to respond to an interrogatory, but if somebody says, I'd like to know about blah, what about blah? This is where you send it. You treat it, whether it's framed that way or not, you treat it as a 21C request and you say, fine, you've got questions. We'll get back to you in a week and we'll tell you how, where we've got records that relate to your question. It's that, again, that's not an IDR. It's not, we're going to stop everything, but somebody's going to figure, we've got this whole, we got 30,000 city employees. Somebody's going to know about X topic. If you can figure out the department, we can figure out who can help you on the X topic,
Okay, should we move on to D?
Sorry,
No, it's okay.
I almost enjoyed
So
that.
I have to tell you,
Yeah.
I'm going to have limited time tonight because, but let's keep making headway.
Yes.
Okay. D.
All right, so this is the SOR stuff. This
Supervisor of records and whether we should use that term or just say city attorney.
right, but regardless, I think this is one of those big concepts.
Mm-hmm.
I think an argument can be made that it is useful or it should be useful, and an argument can be made that they don't want to do it because it violates the attorney-client and their charter authority and state yada yada blah blah. That they're not going to order a department to do something. They don't like that this week. The idea here, I'll just bring it back to the discussion that we had 25 years ago and where this came from, was that there was no, other than the task force, there was no neutral that you could go to in the city and say, department is blocking me or being a pain. I think this record is public. What do you think? And so we battered about this idea. Well, should it be the mayor? No, political, too political. Should it be the board? Same, right? Ethics commission? Well, what are they going to know, right? But the city attorney advises all departments, is supposed to know if a record is public and subject to disclosure, and either should order a department to do it if they're being intransigent, or should enable, coerce, finagle, whatever, that to happen, or at least at a minimum issue a public opinion that says, we in city attorney land think this is a public record and should be subject to disclosure. We're not going to tell the department to do it. That's up to them. But it is our independent opinion that it is and it should be public, because they had the opportunity to review documents like in camera in court that others don't have. And that at that point, 25 years ago, there were arguments about whether that the task force couldn't even review things in camera and didn't necessarily want to, right? What do we know anymore, right? But that a city attorney that advises that department either knows or should know, et cetera. And so that's where this whole concept
I'm
came
gonna
from.
jump in here. At
Yeah.
this point, is the city attorney, I mean, because they just came and made a report to us.
Yeah.
I think they're telling people whether records are public, but they are not, they don't want to compel
Right.
or oversee. So it sounds like they would be happy if we struck, if the custodian refuses or fails to comply with any such order within 10, it's saying they don't want to order the custodian to make it public. So they're willing to make a determination and they want to leave it at, leave it at that. So they would be happier if we struck everything from upon through ordinance. Yes?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And this may be a specific thing where we call it out to the city attorney and say,
We need to know whether you're going to do this or not. And if you're not going to do it, then we're going to make a different recommendation, which would be we need to beef up the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force and have more intake and processing capabilities, because if you're not going to do this, somebody else needs to do it.
Yeah, we need to have somebody who'll do it.
and on balance, they may say, if the alternative is that the task force would have in-camera review power or subpoena power or something, they may say, well, maybe we can work with this and come up with something in-house, right? They may not want the task. And frankly, the task force may not want all that. I mean, do you really want to go through 700?
Here's what I'm going to do.
documents
Here's what I'm
for
going to do,
redaction?
because I think this is above our pay grade. I'm going to highlight everything from upon through ordinance and say full task force needs to discuss this. Yeah.
That
Mhm.
makes sense.
And with city attorney. I mean, this is like literally a David Chu level thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is certainly government team and others, but at some point it's, what is his view of powers and
Yeah.
duties?
What is the city attorney willing to do? And if not willing to do, what does that mean for the task force?
Right.
And do they have any suggestions?
Yeah.
For getting this stuff done? I know there's some, isn't there something on the ballot about an ombudsman
Yes.
for the city?
Mm-hmm.
Push it off on the ombudsman? I'm having trouble with that word.
It's
Yeah.
a mouthful.
If that happens, maybe. But when we've done things like the city services auditor function at the controller's office, then they got into their weird confidentiality stuff. So you can, file a complaint or make a referral to the city services auditor, but then they can't tell you what they're doing about it because they're like, oh, that could compromise, They all get into this investigation
Yeah.
confidentiality stuff. And I could be convinced, but I'm not sure that
Mhm.
the controller or this auditor function or ethics or anybody else has any greater expertise on this stuff than us or city attorney. It's just, the question is there a neutral in the city that can say, you know what, this department is giving you the runaround and they shouldn't,
Yeah.
right? That's not the task force, but is an administrative entity to perform that task. And we couldn't find anybody that was better.
Yeah. Okay. So knowing that we're not going to be able to resolve the second part of this, if we look at the first part, everything from if the custodian refuses through shall be in writing, are we okay with this, understanding that the role of supervisor of records may be held by someone else than the current supervisor of records?
Yeah.
Yes, once again, I don't have a better place for it, but we should also think about whether this section is appropriate in 21, or if this should be an Article 4 thing, or something about, either Article 4 or somewhere else in the context of grievances and remedies. Because this isn't a primary records disclosure thing. This is a, when you got blocked on a records disclosure,
Yeah.
what are your options?
What, that's a good point. So this might belong, you said, in Article 4 in the section for grievances and remedies.
Right.
Okay. This is flagged. Okay. What if we move to E? Okay,
yeah,
this is also grievances and remedies, really.
right.
So should this move, should I copy the same thing? Does this belong here or in Article 4 in the section for grievances and remedies?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know the right
Yeah.
answer, but it's a good question.
I'm kind of inclined to, I mean, I sort of want to get there, but it does feel like this maybe needs to move there.
Right. Yeah, and once again, we need the larger discussion on task force.
And it's got to say Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
Yeah. That's an extra word, but
Yes.
yeah. See, so you can,
Yeah.
never mind. Yeah, there was sloppy drafting. I don't deny that. But again, we need the larger discussion about powers and duties of the task force, right? Maybe what is in there is totally correct. Maybe not. You know, has the 45-day rule, right?
Mhm.
Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe that could be limited, right? I mean, stepping back for a second, let's say somebody makes a records request, department responds some way, they're not happy with it, right? Let's say they go the SOR route, if that exists, and that helps them or doesn't. But they should still have some option to come to us, right? So they come to us, they file a complaint, whatever our complaint procedures are. We have a committee hearing, we make a recommendation, it gets to the full task force, okay? Whatever that means. Now there's a grievance, there's a real live controversy at the full task force. What should the full task force be able to do about it? Should we be able to order a department to do something that it hasn't done or can't do or doesn't want to do? I don't know. Should we force them to mediate? Should, if the department's giving us bad answers like, I don't know, and if you say, are you the most knowledgeable person in the department? And they say, I think so, but somebody else was on vacation and I was the one who was, okay. We've heard all of these excuses before, right? What should our powers be? If I don't get an answer in 5 minutes, you're going to jail, $10,000 fine, loss of employment, right? Referral to ethics. I don't know the answer, right? But I'm saying this is where it absolutely gets to powers and duties, enforcement and powers and duties of the task force. And I don't know frankly, how much power we should be vested with. I'm not sure that I want to do any more or less than we're doing now. If it's helpful, great. If it's longer hearings about stupid stuff, I don't need that.
Okay, let's look
Okay,
at the
anyway.
language
Yeah, yeah.
because philosophizing takes a long time.
Yeah.
If the custodian, okay,
That's
let's look at
four.
E.
Yeah.
And let's look at the first couple of sentences.
Mm-hmm.
First sentence makes sense to me. The part where we get to, shall inform the petitioner as soon as possible and within 2 days after its next meeting, but in no case later than 45 days from when a petition in writing is received of its determination whether the record requested or any part of the record request is public. So this is essentially what primarily the complaints committee is doing, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what's with the within 2 days after its next meeting? Because aren't they informed at the meeting?
They're informed at the meeting of the decision, but this gets to the what do you call it? Perfecting and finalizing an OD.
No, this is no. This is not about an OD.
No.
So inform them as soon as possible within 2 days after its next meeting, but in no case later than 45 days from when a petition is received of its determination whether the record requested or any part of the record requested is public. This is just the first look, like, do we have jurisdiction? Is the record public? That's what this is about.
Let me just say, that's one way to read it.
No, I think that is the way to read it, because there's no way we are issuing orders of determination 45 days after petitions are received. We are not. We're doing it 3 years after.
But if you break it into pieces, the within 2 days after the meeting is about finalizing and issuing an OD.
No,
I'm telling you, this is how it got parsed. I'm not saying I like it. I'm saying that's where that whole OD madness came from. Otherwise, there wouldn't necessarily be an OD. Okay? Just suspend disbelief for 1 second. The 45 days was the you can't sit on stuff. And that's disconnected from the whether we've got the disability seat filled or we cancel a meeting or any of that. That's like in the abstract, stuff should be heard within 45 days. Sure, okay. But there's no penalty in the ordinance. So this is a term that the attorneys have said is directory only, that because there's no penalty or consequence for not doing it, it directs us to try to be within 45 days. Okay.
They came up with this.
Yeah. Isn't that clever? Good stuff.
Clever.
okay, but what we've been doing is making sure that everything either gets a first hearing or is on a, like, I mean, that's part of the reason we sometimes hear cases, like if there's a backlog with the complaint committee, but they're not issuing orders of determination. They're just determining that there's jurisdiction and the records are public.
Right. So then you go from this sentence to, and you're right, this is as written is just the threshold determination of whether a record requested or any part of
Is
it
public.
is public.
Correct. So it
Then-
has nothing to do, so that sentence has nothing to do with orders of determination.
The first part of it, I think, turned into the OD. The second part, you're right, does not. But then go to the third, which is the next sentence. When requested by the petition and were otherwise desirable, whatever the heck that means, the determination shall be in writing. And then, upon the determination that a record is public, the task force shall immediately order the custodian to comply with the person's request. So then, in order to get to that, first you have to find that a record is public, maybe do it in writing. And once you've made that determination, then that triggers the task force to order the custodian at the department to make the record.
So this doesn't actually reflect what we do.
Oh, this is all mumbo jumbo, okay? That's what I'm saying. You have
Let's
to
rewrite it.
right.
Okay.
So you have
okay.
to suspend disbelief, and that's why I'm saying if you start out with a clean slate, what do you want? What is reasonable for a task force like ours to do in the face of a reasonable complaint?
Right. Without us being
Without
paid-
45 days or 2 days or within.
Well, wait, you want to know what's ideal or what makes sense?
What? Start with what makes sense.
Okay.
Then we can figure.
I think what makes sense that we could say, as soon as possible, strike the within 2 days after this next meeting. So as soon as possible, but in no case later than 45 days. Are you listening to what I'm saying? Member Pilpel? You can't talk and listen at the same time. The Sunshine Ordinance Task Force shall inform the petitioner as soon as possible, but in no case later than 45 days from when a petition in writing is received, of its determination whether, I would say, it has jurisdiction and the record requested or any part of the record requested is public, because that is what we are actually doing.
Okay, but sorry to ask it this way.
Mhm.
How does that help the world? What is that doing for us, for petitioners, for respondents, for anybody? What is it that,
You said, what do we have the capacity to do? And that's what we have the capacity to do.
okay. So does that help the petitioner? Does that clarify things for the respondent? Does that actually move the ball anywhere?
I think putting in the if we have jurisdiction is important
Mhm.
because most petitioners think we have jurisdiction over everything.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't.
And sometimes we don't.
Okay, so fair enough. So let's say that 90% of the complaints or petitions that we get, we have jurisdiction over, and it's only the federal government, postal service, parks, what do you call it? Parks Alliance or Presidio Trust or BART or something that we would, or Housing Authority, right? Where we would say, that's an interesting complaint, but we actually don't have jurisdiction over the Housing Authority.
Mhm.
We should be able to say that within 45 days.
Yes.
Frankly, we should be able to say that within 45 minutes. And we should have a list of agencies that we handle and agencies that we don't handle. And there shouldn't be that many or frankly anybody that's in the middle where we're not quite sure.
Yeah.
Right? So that should be pretty straightforward. But what does that give them?
It tells them whether they can move forward with their complaint.
Okay.
Well, and actually it's more than whether they can move forward with their complaint, because once we say that, they actually can take that back to the agency where they've requested a record and said, look, the task force is going to hear my complaint eventually. Do you want to comply now or do you want to be dragged into a meeting?
Understood. But fair enough.
And
That-
in which
that
case
is
they've
all-
already been dragged into a meeting
Right.
because they had to show up at complaint.
Right. And that's often what triggers them. And that's when they say it went to the wrong email address. We never saw it. Now that, somebody
And sometimes
pulled
they
it
get
out,
cleaned up.
and
Right.
they fix it.
Right. So
So-
what's the problem?
No problem. But that's not actually a hearing on the merits. That's all I'm saying.
No,
If-
but is it solving a problem for a petitioner?
It may be solving, I don't know that it's solving that many problems for that many petitioners. So I think about the past complaints. that
What
we-
do you want to do differently?
I'm not sure the answer. I started out with some other thing that said, in the event that there's a complaint, the task force shall hear it and shall, make whatever decision or orders as it, sees fit under the circumstances. But that's very loose. A lot of the things that we've dealt with recently and over the fullness of time have either been specific and narrow, you were, 5 minutes late, or, trying to solve a big problem, right? You're not really providing for free records for this thing, or the way you've got your records organized isn't that great, or your interpretation of state law is different from our understanding of how an office should be organized. So some of these things require a degree of cooperation and creativity that's not well spelled out in the law. And I'm not sure that you can spell it out. And some of that, again, requires departments to be willing to engage. If you get out of the gotcha mode that you were 5 minutes late or somebody was on vacation and you didn't check the email box, right? Okay, so we didn't, I'm sorry, right? Once you get past that and you can get to the structural fixes and the how can we work together to improve your website and to get people what they want, people are going to ask for stuff. You've got to have the resources.
Okay,
to run,
I'd like to
et cetera.
move us forward
All right,
because
right.
again, we're getting into philosophizing and we're not
Okay.
actually doing anything about it.
Sorry.
So here's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Right now, we've got, so if the custodian refuses, fails to comply, or incompletely replies with the request described in B above, or if a petition is denied or not acted on by the supervisor.
And I would strike that last thing. I
About-
would not have this be connected to SOR.
I think I agree. Member Anderson, do you agree?
Yeah, at this point in time. since
Okay.
We really don't have a supervisor.
So we're going to say, or if a petition is denied, and I'm going to strike the or acted upon. Okay, so then, so striking it or not acted upon by the supervisor. of
No,
public works.
no.
I'm striking that.
Okay.
Yes.
So would just say,
Incompletely complies, or if
the
a petition is denied.
no, I would just say, or incompletely complies with a request described in subsection B, comma, the person.
Oh, I see. Okay,
So just
okay.
take
Yeah,
out-
yeah.
Right.
Got it, got it.
That
got
you've
it.
got an independent route
Yeah.
to either SOR if it exists or the task force.
But we're taking
period.
that out. The person making the request may petition the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force for determination whether the record requested is public. And now we're talking about phase one. The Sunshine Ordinance Task Force shall inform the petitioner as soon as possible, but in no case later than 45 days from when a petition in writing is
Taking
received.
out the 2 business.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it just doesn't make sense. But in no case later than 45 days from when a petition in writing is received of its determination whether the task force has jurisdiction and whether the record requested or any part of the record requested is public.
Okay.
Okay, and then when requested by the petition and where otherwise desirable.
Oh, hold on.
Okay,
Before you
so
go to,
I feel like we need to make it, so here's the thing. Is this the point when we want to say phase two?
maybe, but
So
before you go to
paragraph A.
before you go to phase 2,
Mhm.
right? Tell me again. I get
This is phase one.
No, no.
Everything I just read is about essentially what goes through usually
right.
the complaint committee.
Okay, I get that. I get the jurisdiction part, right? What's the agency, et cetera.
Mhm.
But as to the determination whether the record requested or any part of it is public, if the person alleges that there is a record and
Mhm.
it's public, and the agency says we don't have a record or we do and it's not public for these reasons, right? Absent seeing the record or having competent counsel who can review the record, how does the task force make such a determination that
We
the
do it all the
record?
time.
No,
Okay, well, it's not the
because
task
we don't
force.
actually do
No,
that.
we,
so much.
no, the
Well, there's task force
committees, the committees determine, well, the committees recommend that we have jurisdiction
Right.
and that the records are public. Is it an official determination? No, but we're saying this is the direction we're going. I mean, they
But-
do make a determination.
Right. But what I'm saying is that although it says that, we don't really do that like that. We more so say that either we agree or don't agree with your rationale for withholding, or you didn't do a diligent search or whatever. We usually aren't making this kind of,
Actually, we do. We determine whether there's jurisdiction.
I know.
And the records are public, and we acknowledge that there's a complaint. And then we move things to the full task force.
Okay.
Although sometimes we, we'll make we'll issue it with a recommendation for what the task force should do. And the complaint committee seems to be more active in getting people essentially to, what are the sign off letters? Yep, we made a mistake. What are those called?
acknowledgement things.
I know what you're talking about.
The thing where they acknowledge a
Right.
thing.
They essentially admit that they
technical
made a mistake. They admit a technical violation, and they provide the records, and the petitioner gets the records, and nobody has to show up for another meeting.
Right. There's some amount of that, not a whole lot, but okay.
Or
Right.
if they stick to the line that it's not public, then at least if we have them come in and we say we have jurisdiction, we come in and say, as we were doing with Lieutenant Beauchamp, cite where this is not public.
Right,
You're gonna have to write something. You can't-
right. You have to cite the exemption.
Cite
Yeah.
the exemptions, yeah.
I guess my question is, Member Pilpel, I hear you not liking what we have here, but I'm not hearing a specific ask for something different.
True. I think what I'm trying to say, and being less articulate than I would like to be, is that if you consider that phase one, and I get that,
Mhm.
I think phase one has limited utility. And if you break it up into phases 1, 2, and 3, then that suggests multiple hearings on the same topic.
Isn't that what we're doing?
Well, maybe or maybe not.
Are you, okay, then are you suggesting that we do it a different way? And if so, what is that different way?
Ultimately, I think that we should have a committee hear a thing and a recommendation of the full task force, and that's it.
That's
And-
what we do.
Yeah, but you can read this as requiring subsequent a subsequent hearing or a further determination, and then an order, and all kinds of process around the thing, as opposed to, did you ask for a thing? Did the department give you the thing? And if not, what are we here and what do you want? Right? I think that this breaks it down into pieces that aren't necessarily useful. So if we order them, to do a thing, if we make a determination that we have jurisdiction and that it's public, and then order a department to disclose, then we have to determine if a department has complied.
Right, but
With a
but hold on,
follow-up.
you've jumped ahead because we've determined jurisdiction and whether the record requested is public,
Right.
but we haven't heard the complaint yet.
Right. So we haven't even heard it on the merits.
Right,
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the next phase,
yeah,
phase 2 or 3, wherever we're at,
2,
is on the merits.
yeah.
Then, if on the merits, no. Then on the determination that the record is public, then the task force under this language shall immediately order disclosure or compliance.
But we don't do that. We have
Right.
not been doing that.
Not in this way.
Right.
Right. And then it says if the custodian refuses or fails to comply, so that essentially requires a compliance hearing to determine.
Hold on. You have jumped ahead. So
Okay.
if we determine jurisdiction and that the record or part of the record is public,
Yeah. I would like to do, if we're going to do that, I would
then
like to
it's
do
got to
that-
go to the full task force. It has not gone to the full task force yet. That is
Okay.
just phase 1. So there's something not reflected in here.
Okay.
So, like,
Upon that determination or recommendation,
no, but
the
the
full
pro-
task force shall, it doesn't even say in here that it can be done by committee, but we're
Right.
assuming-
Well, it can't be. It has not been.
Right.
So,
So do we want that to be a delegable power or a recommendation of? There are ways to slice and dice this. I don't want to necessarily write committees into the ordinance. Do you?
So what we're saying is we're operating now with complaints being filed, department's not responding. We send it to complaint committee. They determine we have jurisdiction and that they're public records based on what the complainant is saying.
so here's the good news. A lot of what, and maybe Ms. Peterson can verify this, but it seems that the complaint committee, which does most of the intake, very often they are, finding out, yeah, we should have handed that over, and we admit a violation, and then things move on, and we just get these, the consent calendar, right? Where everyone agrees that they should have handed them over. They didn't hand them over. They've handed them over now. Nobody wants to show up for another meeting. Is that correct?
That can be an element, yes.
Yeah. So there are ways for it to happen in one meeting, and it has happened in one meeting, even though maybe the official, sign off happens later, but the initial, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this.
I guess in part, I recognize that, and I'm not diminishing what the committee is doing in our consent calendar and all that. I just question the value of that. So if you're going to say, fine, of the 10,000 requests that X department got, that they, had 10 technical violations because they were 5 minutes late, and they agreed with that, what is that doing for the world? At the end of the day, I kind of want the guy or the person that requested the stuff to get their stuff and to be done with it. I don't care that much about the tallies and the numbers and the statistics. I just want them to get the stuff.
So what do you want to be different here?
I'm not sure. I like the couple of sentences later with the DA and the Attorney General, who may take whatever measures she or he deems necessary to ensure compliance with the provisions of this ordinance.
Yeah. It almost looks as if the first part of the ordinance, this section of the ordinance was written so we could get the enforcement part of this ordinance in here.
Yeah.
Through the supervisor of records. And the
Okay.
Attorney General. So, but the fact of the matter is, in real life,
Isn't that how it works?
it's not
Right.
Yeah.
how it's happening. No, and
Right.
so we have to find some enforcement mechanism. Otherwise, this is their words, but it really doesn't move the ball up the hill
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Which is why I also think that the DA and the AG, that's all kind of false hope nonsense stuff. I do think that there is value, or there should be value, with the supervisor of records process, right? Even if it's
Yes.
just make a determination, that's it, and you've got a time frame.
Clarification, if nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. A second pass, somebody who wasn't figured out, right? There's also value in having a court remedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe you were in closed session. That was in violation of the law. You should declare that null and void, and there are remedies and penalties. Okay. And there may be lesser appropriate penalties for records or for other meeting violations. I'm good with that, right? Kind of the middle ground of where the task force sits and possibly the ethics commission, right? The part of the reason for the ethics commission referral madness, 67.34, all of that, is that the task force wasn't vested with, and I don't think should be vested with, the ability to fire or discipline an employee. That was like what do you call it? An official misconduct concept that is properly vested at ethics. And that if we've got enough ammunition to say this department head, right, is screwing up so much and has no clue, and their records are a mess, and they can't comply worth squat, and they really are a pinhead, right? If we've got the book on them, we should be able to send that over to ethics every so often, and they should hold a serious hearing about it. Okay, right? Is it the same as Mir Karimi and what? No, but whatever. It's an official misconduct proceeding. That should be rare, right? But in the main, if we're the administrative appeal body, right, that's less than going to court, but it's more than, getting the bum's rush at the department, what can we do and what is appropriate? And I'm sorry, I don't have the right answer for that. We should be able to get the parties together, narrow the, the dispute, and say, okay, what is it that you want? What is it that you can do, right? The guy's just asking you to go have somebody go look at the video for 20 minutes. And if it's what he wants, can you just make a copy of the video and give it to the guy? And if he says, yeah, if that's all he wants, we can do that. Great. Then we're done. Bye. Right?
So,
But I don't know how to write that in.
Okay. So I think we need to do a couple of things, and actually we're going to need, that clock is wrong, but we're going to need to wrap things up soon.
Yeah.
You know what? Here's the thought. Maybe rather than doing fast edits, which I would be happy to do, but I think Member Pilpel would not be happy. What if can the three of us agree to take a closer look at a closer look at E through L? And obviously I want to go beyond this in the next one, but it does, when I said at the beginning, we live in 6721, like almost, I would say like 75, 80% of our complaints have to do with this section.
Yep.
I think we have to get this right. Let's pay extra attention to this. And then here's the question, because we also talked about at the beginning, maybe in October, taking up some of the big ideas.
Mhm.
And if we take up the big ideas, are we thinking throughout the whole ordinance? Would that make both of you happy to maybe have a little more focused, instead of just I definitely want to get through this section at the next meeting, but because it includes some of those big ideas, maybe next meeting is also the one where we talk about big ideas. in terms of, if we're talking about the supervisor of records,
Or at
what is a
least as far as
custodian
we've
of
gotten with
records?
big ideas. There may be more later, but yeah.
Sure. But so going back to the beginning, everything we've done so far and through 6721, and maybe we can hash out some of those things. Okay. What do you think, Ms. Peterson?
I am going to be requesting clarification on what you would like in the minutes.
Oh, what to put in the minutes? Yes. Okay. I could say right now for the minutes that we discussed sections 6720 and portions of 6721.
A through E, and we're still working through E. Yes.
Yeah, I
Would
don't
like to
even,
leave it
But
at
yeah,
portions
that's
of.
I would just leave it portions of.
Yep.
And you say the committee plans to further discuss 6721 at the next committee meeting, as well as, I don't know if anybody else is going to understand big ideas. How about major themes that appear throughout the Sunshine Ordinance? Does that work?
Sure. And if it doesn't, then people will be like, what is that?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Right. Nice little, it's a nice
Yeah.
little tease.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I will, and then we'll think about how we will list that on the agenda so that people actually have a sense of what we're going to be talking about. Okay.
Can I take another second, or you really want to wrap now?
We need to wrap very soon because I need to go to the airport.
Oh.
Well, I have to go home and then I have to go to the airport.
Got it.
So I was going to go from here and I realized that was not a good idea.
Airport isn't coming to you.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
All right. So if you can just give me a second, what I was going to say is I don't know, just looking at the rest of the article for a moment. Sorry, the rest of that section. F, I don't know if we need F and what that relates to. That's just kind of discussing administrative remedies generally. G, yeah, that's true, but maybe that can be moved somewhere. I don't know if it's needed. H,
Hold on, let me look at which one. You said G was as a remedy. I'm going to make that same note about this might belong in the remedy section.
right.
Grievances and remedies. Okay. Wait.
F and
Yeah,
G.
F and G. Okay.
Right. Or maybe some of those don't have to be in the ordinance because they're understood. Whatever. There are
Okay.
options about F and G. I think H runs with the SOR stuff.
Okay.
I think I is the no, I think I is okay, but maybe I don't know if I stays here or if I ends up again with the city attorney or with the SOR stuff, because I just sticks out like a bit of a sore thumb. Like this was the
Okay. Now
Okay,
we're
yeah.
getting into too many
You're
details. We
right.
can discuss this next time.
Okay. And we talked about K. Oh, and the thing I was going to say about L is all about electronic stuff, and I was going to suggest moving that to the next section. So all I'm saying
Why
is,
don't we discuss that when
That's
we?
right,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
what I'm saying is I like the language in 21. 21 is the bedrock stuff
Mhm.
in this section of the ordinance. I just think that 21 has too many things tossed in. It's like a soup that doesn't taste good, because separately it would be fine, but
Mhm.
it's like this weird combo soup. That's all.
Yep.
Flashing fake.
Member Anderson, any final thoughts about what we've done today or about our plan for the next meeting?
I think our plan for the next meeting is the correct one to take,
Okay.
to continue going through this section of the ordinance, because again, this is the one most quoted. You see it, why are you here? I'm here because of
Right.
721. And I think it would be a good idea to start introducing those big themes now,
Mhm.
just to give the full task force an idea of which way we're going on that there are big ideas in the future coming up. So as far as making this more efficient.
I think you both have a good point in making that request, and I think you're right. We've gone through enough of it to maybe start teasing out what those issues are going to be.
And enforcement, I think, is going to be the biggest, because that's what we bump up against
Yeah.
as far as what we're trying to do with things that come 6721, when departments come in and say, no, you can't have my records, or
Right.
these are not public records, and we're going, but,
Yeah.
and they say, sorry, this is what I'm telling you. So something to consider.
Yes, I do see a connection between powers and duties of the task force and composition of the task force, right? So we may be the good people for it, but in the future, if it's more or less power, it may warrant other types of players or different types of seats.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, I think we have to open this up for public comment if there's anyone there.
Would you like me to read what I have first?
Sure.
Member Pilpel provided a draft analysis of the comparison, a draft analysis / comparison of the Ralph M. Brown Act, the California Public Records Act, and the Sunshine Ordinance, period.
Can we say
The-
submitted for inclusion in the file? I want to make it clear that we didn't discuss something that wasn't included. Or we didn't, yeah. That was the intention.
We weren't acting on it.
We weren't acting on it.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're in violation of the agenda.
Member Pilpel submitted a draft analysis / comparison of the Ralph M. Brown Act, California Public Records Act, and the Sunshine Ordinance for inclusion in the file, period.
Yeah.
The Sunshine Ordinance Administrator will provide a copy of this document to Chair Yankee. The committee members,
I don't think that sentence needs to be in the minutes. That's fine, but I don't think it needs to be in the minutes.
it'll not be in the minutes. We understand the instruction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that it will also be provided to Member Wolf.
Yeah.
The committee members discussed Article 3, Section 6720 and portions of 6721, period. The committee plans to further discuss 67.21 and major themes that appear throughout the Sunshine Ordinance at the next meeting of the Compliance and Amendments Committee.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Excellent. That makes me happy. Shall we call for public comment on item 6, if there's anyone there?
On item 6, we have no one in the room and we have no one in the online community.
Okay, public comment is closed. Please call the next item.
Item 7, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items by members of the Compliance and Amendments Committee.
I have nothing because I think we have enough work to do on this ongoing item. Members, anything else?
No.
I have nothing.
Okay, next item, please.
Oh, we should open it up for public comment.
Item 8, adjournment.
Sure.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
You don't
So
want to open up
moved.
item 7 for public comment?
There's nobody there. Okay, so moved. By acclamation, all in favor?
Aye.
Taken by acclamation.
Adjourned at 7:59.
Thank you so much.
Recording is ending.